destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, February 28, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Wilfred Codrington, assistant professor of law at Brooklyn Law School, on Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick. Also on the program today, Ukrainian and Russian delegations meet on the Belarusian border. No progress as war rages. Meanwhile, Putin puts nuke deterrent forces on high alert.
Not funny.
Not funny. One imagines they're always on high alert, but he makes a point of telling people about it. U.S. and Europe removed some of Russian banks from the SWIFT global banking network. Putin apparently promised Macron he'll stop strikes against civilian targets. So we got that going for us. The Supreme Court to hear a case today that could very well eviscerate the EPA and begin the total assault on our regulatory state. Absentee ballot rejections spike in Texas primaries based on its new voting law. First Capitol riot defendant trial set to open in D.C. today. The CDC eases mask guidance. Biden's State of the Union will be mask optional. New research points to Wuhan wet market as the genesis of COVID-19. Trump wins the CPAC straw poll. And lastly, Freedom Convoy flames out in the dead of night. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I am back and here throughout that brief vacation time I had. Did anything happen, Emma?
Some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to take this week off, didn't get any of the heat that perhaps was directed towards Matt and myself. And
you guys take some heat?
I would say.
Well,
so now you get to come in clear-headed with a tan.
Yeah, people didn't like my Love is Blind take.
Yeah, well, I'm midway through that. I'm almost done. Oh man, it's even better this season.
I don't even know what that means.
Okay.
But I can assure you that the heat that I took in the midst of Disney World, we'll talk more about that. If there wasn't a war raging right now, I probably would come back and talk a little bit about the nightmare that Disney was. But it seems to obviously pale in comparison. And but I obviously was following things to some extent, to the extent that I could, being knee deep in 24/7
Tomorrowland
with two children.
Yeah.
And Tomorrowland. Yes.
You seem to have you're tan. You're bronzed.
I went into a tanning booth.
Oh yeah. That's how you got away with secretly being at CPAC.
Right.
Inside all the time.
Right. I don't know that it occurred to me to head over there.
Yeah.
Somebody
was a lot
suggested
going
to me,
on.
like, you could write this whole thing off as business trip if you walked over there. And I'm like,
All you gotta do is leave your kids unattended and go to sit back.
exactly.
Gotta do it, kids.
Exactly. I will get to the Disney stuff after a while, and maybe not today, but sometime in the future. Just want to. Well, let's play these clips, because one of the things that I found interesting, and this is, I want to be clear here that there's a lot of reasons one could point to as to why what's happening with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that it could resonate with people in Europe and across the world in a different way than in other conflicts. Because Europe is the site of the last two world wars, the only two world wars that we've had. Russia, former superpower, arguably, at least militarily, still one of the superpowers, I guess. And there's a lot of, and nuclear weapons. I mean, and so there's a lot of reason why this conflict would get more attention than, say, the Saudis and our involvement in that assault on Yemen, which, is going to end up killing and has killed. We don't know where this is going with Russia and Ukraine, but thousands upon thousands of people. In Afghanistan, Joe Biden just, taking that money, and there's no guarantee that $7 billion had it been allowed to flow back to the Taliban would alleviate any or all of the suffering in Afghanistan, although you could imagine it would alleviate some. There are millions of people in Afghanistan who are looking at potential starvation right now. And so there's no, these are apples and oranges things, and it's not to take away from what's going on in Ukraine. But it's just something to be aware of, and I think we're going to talk about this more going forward. And there's some theories out there as to what's going on with that. But it has been part of the reason why there's so much more attention being paid. And again, I don't think it's all the reason, and I don't think it's maybe not even the majority. Who knows how to assess these things? But it's because of who is being invaded.
Yeah.
And by who, I mean, well, I'll let this guy, CBS News foreign correspondent Charlie D'Agata, who has apologized for this, but nevertheless, it's revealing. This is not about Charles D'Agata or whatever the guy's name is.
Yeah, right.
We've got more of these clips. It's really, in many respects, about all of us. But here it is.
Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. So it's partly human nature, but they are not in denial.
All right, let's just be clear here. I mean, part of the reason why Iraq had conflict for decades was because we started bombing and invading them at one point. Now, of course, there was also the Iran war prior to that, and the war with Kuwait, prior to that.
But the United States deliberately targeted Iraq's water purification and infrastructure systems, and knowing it would spread disease, and so that might have contributed to the lack of civilization that he's referencing.
Right.
But it's about the color of people's skin. Let's be real. And
it's not like Ukraine has not seen any type of war that is happening. The eastern front of Ukraine, there's been ongoing conflict since 2014. I mean, but yes, it is about race. It is about some notion of economic development, I guess. So these are people who look like us in buildings that look like ours.
You see the Christian thing get thrown around too.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, here's another. I mean, it's not just about Charlie Delgado, whatever his name is. Here's NBC News correspondent Kelly Kobiela. Yeah. I don't know.
Just to put it bluntly, these are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. And that, quite frankly, is part of it. These are Christians, they're white, they're very similar to people who live in Poland.
Whoa.
And look, there is an aspect of human nature where it's like, oh my gosh, my kid wears clothes just like that and has that same, whatever it is, the Chatty Cathy doll or whatever, and so people sort of relate to it more. But it is pretty stunning when you contemplate it. And again, there are a lot of other factors associated with this. There's nukes involved in this. There's our longtime rival from the Cold War. But when you look at it just in terms of like sheer human misery, we're not at the level of where we are in Yemen or in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria. I could keep going on in Libya. Play this example of it. Here's Al Jazeera's Peter Dobby.
Population. And as you're talking to us, Matthew, we're playing in the latest pictures of some of the refugees trying to get on trains or trying to get out of Ukraine. And what's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm looking to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
Fuck off.
Well, that was somebody else who was watching. But the sentiment, I think, is appropriate. I mean, I got news for you. They're refugees. They're refugees. Like, they're not refugees from the Middle East or from Africa, but they're refugees.
There were some middle-class refugees in all those other places as well.
Exactly.
What does middle class mean in this context?
Prosperous.
Right.
I mean, there's an understanding.
No, what middle class in this instance means white.
Yes. Average. Somebody I can relate to. Somebody who would be next door to you, potentially.
But Matt's point stands. I mean, you had 4 million people displaced in the Iraq War, for instance. 2 million internally, 2 externally. These are middle-class people. These are doctors. These are lawyers. These are bus drivers. These are teachers. These are laborers. These are, shopkeepers and clerks who work at the shops. And there's a whole, from an economic standpoint, it's the full mix. You don't get to decide.
Well, so Branko Markotić, over the weekend, I was just reminded of this. There was a fake news clip going around. Well, it wasn't fake news. It was a video of a young Palestinian girl confronting an Israeli soldier, and it was being circulated, even though it's in like the arid, hot area, and saying that this was what was happening in Ukraine, and a lot of people got fooled. And the response is entirely different in that context, as opposed to, the global solidarity, which is helpful that we're seeing, especially from the West, but it does demonstrate the gaps in our empathy when it comes to certain people. It's instructive, and it's, of course, widespread over foreign correspondent media as well.
There was a tweet thread, and we're going to try and get her on over the next week or so. Kimberly St. Julian Varnon. She's a PhD student at UPenn, but she's she's studying in a specific discipline of history. And the brief thread was about how in 2014, Ukrainians were not considered Europeans, or at least Western Europeans. They were still considered Eastern Europeans. And I, you know, I don't know if you remember, Matt, but we did not. I mean, we covered the Crimea a little bit, and I remember John McCain saying, we, you know, bomb, 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 which is his usual refrain at that time before he died. And but there was certainly not this outpouring of concern and sentiment, and it's very instructive to see both how a people move from one category of who they are into another category of who they are as perceived by the Western world, you know, the rich Northern Hemisphere Western world, white world largely. And I mean, that aspect is interesting. And then also how once you're included in that basket, the perspective that people have about your suffering, you know, when we talk about white supremacy and we talk about the value gap that Eddie, professor from Princeton, Eddie Glaude wrote about the value gap in the way that we value lives. Like you couldn't have a better illustration of it.
And how whiteness is a social construct and like largely tied to economic prosperity and being at the top of the pyramid in capitalism.
I think there's a lot of people that see like the previous conflicts like Iraq and say like, no, doctors couldn't have been put out by that. It must have been all just like rabble.
Right, yeah. Right. And it makes you wonder also, how did they go from 2014 to now? What were the factors that were involved in that, essentially that transfiguration from not really quite white to white, not quite really, you know, like Western European to Western European, not quite developed to developed, and I you know, in the eyes of those who are constructing this. And again, I want to make it clear, like, this is not to say you should not have, I mean, what's going on over there is horrible, but I think it's important to just sort of be conscious of this. And I would be curious as to how that transfiguration changed, because, you know, we're entering into a moment now where, and I think there's arguments about NATO expansion that I think have value. I think there's a lot of, you know, I don't know how rational an actor Putin is, but what's clear is there were certain assumptions that he made that were wrong. Things may have followed logically from that afterwards, but you know, it's not like in the early aughts or in the 90s rather, when the idea of expanding NATO was up, there was a lot of people, some hawks, you know, Gary Hutz, Sam Nunn, who was a pretty hawkish guy, Democrat from Georgia, who were saying we should not expand NATO because we have an equilibrium, we should maintain it. And but there are others, and you know, I mean, so there's a lot of things that are going on in terms of these factors here. And I don't necessarily have any answers, but it's really more about exploring some of these questions and hoping that, you know, there is some very quick end to this, because you can see the possibility of things escalating. And
well, I mean, Putin's demands, it's starting to feel that way because the demands are that I want a denazification of the Ukrainian state, demilitarization, and ensuring a neutral status of Ukraine, which essentially means I want this to be Belarus for me. I want a neutral, aka I think pro-Russian leader, and no more Zelensky. That's what it's starting to seem like.
Oh, I think that's what he wanted to. I think he wanted to do in the first place, and it didn't work out that way. And who knows if? I guess what I'm worried about on some level is like this is. You don't know. There's no way to know. Is Putin at this point? Would he welcome an exit ramp where he doesn't look like he's losing face? Does NATO at this point say like, oh, wait a second, maybe this guy's now backheeled. Maybe we escalate this a little bit, and this is a way of getting Putin off the world stage. I mean, both those things are terrifying. So
and it's complicated too that right now Saudi Arabia has developed a relationship, as was reported by Ken Klippenstein, and they're driving up oil prices with Russia, and there's China in the wings that they're at least neutral on Russia's aggression right now. So
all right, going to take I get a couple of sponsors, and then we will be talking to Professor Wilfred Codrington about Joe Biden's pick, which was also I was a little worried about that.
Yeah, that was good news.
Pretty good news. Ketanji Brown Jackson is the nominee. We will talk to the professor about that. Just a show note tonight at about, I think it's about 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be on the Twitch show Log Off already.
Wow.
Yeah, James Cole Cash.
That's fun.
And so I'll be on there for about 45 minutes. It's a long time coming. He asked me to do it a long time ago. And of course, I lost emails and I got whatever. But pretty excited to do that. And apparently it's his birthday too. So, folks, time is money. You don't have to waste either with repeated trips to the post office. Stamps.com lets you print official postage right from your computer. Saves you money in the process, and you can spend less time at the post office, more time in your office or your apartment, or you can do this 24/7. And what happens? Your customers are happy. For more than 20 years, Stamps.com has been an indispensable to over 1 million businesses. And with Stamps.com, you get discounts you can't find anywhere else, like 40% off U.S. Postal Service rates and 76% off of UPS. Doesn't matter whether you're an office sending invoices. Doesn't matter whether you got an Etsy shop or you're sending merch from your podcast, or I don't know, you're a Matthew Film guy and you got your
DVDs to send out.
Your DVDs to send out, or your you got one of those eBay shops. You can be a full-blown warehouse. Shipping out orders, Stamps.com is going to make your life easier. You get access to all the post office and UPS shipping services you need right from your computer. You just need a computer and a standard printer. That's it. You can print your own postage. U.S. Postal, like stamps, a functional equivalent of a stamp.
Right.
That's pretty exciting. And you can do it at 5 a.m. You're like, you know what? I can't sleep. I'm gonna send off a couple of DVDs. Boom, you do it. Stamps.com is basically what got me through the early stage of this podcast when I was sending out DVDs as part of the membership.
Mm.
And that was the first couple of years back in the day, back when, my fingers were nimble. Not so much today. I can't pack it. I had Mila at one point stuff envelopes.
Oh, really?
Yep. I paid her money. But you can stop overpaying for shipping with Stamps.com. Sign up with promo code Majority Report, and they're going to give you a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a digital scale. There's no long-term commitments, no contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, Click on the microphone at the top of the page, enter the code Majority Report. Also, you know my watchwords, the best time to look for someone to hire is when you don't need to hire somebody. So you're not in a full-on panic about it.
Develop a bank.
Yeah. According to the latest research, 90% of employers plan to make enhancing the employee experience a top priority in 2022. I can tell you, I was just down in Disney and understaffed.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff wasn't up, no. Fully booked, understaffed. And there was a lot of people I was around who were like murmuring. They didn't like it. They did not like it. So it's important you have a happy workplace. It's key to attracting and keeping great employees. Frankly, you should allow for unions, and maybe I shouldn't be saying that on the ad thing, but you allow people to unionize.
Yeah.
You give people to, snacks. That's important too.
For morale.
But obviously better wages.
Not that we have snacks here, but
healthcare. Cora, what are you talking about?
Okay, sorry.
Well, we got a water cooler.
Yeah.
What'd you say that raised?
Snack on water.
Yeah. Well, pretty soon we're going to have bread.
Liquid IV is a solid before you put it in the water.
Yeah. But if you need to add more employees to your team, there's ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter's matching technology helps you find the right people for your roles fast. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter uses its powerful technology. It finds and matches the right candidates up with your job. Then it proactively presents these candidates to you. You can easily review these recommended candidates, and you invite your top choices, and you invite them to apply to your job, which of course encourages them to apply faster. That's how we got Brendan. Old Brendan, that we call him now. Then we got Bradley through Brendan. I mean, that's the way it works, folks. ZipRecruiter's technology is so effective, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. I did. We had a lot of really good candidates. Brendan was just like made in a test tube for this job.
Right.
Find the right employees for your workplace with ZipRecruiter. You can try for free at this exclusive web address. Ready? ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's exclusive to us. ZipRecruiter.com/MAJORITY. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. And I wanted to do a shout out to my favorite sponsor, Sunset Lake Seder. Sunset Lake Seder. If you use the code Left is Best, you get 20% off. Why? Because for people who have listened to the show for a long time, you know that for me, sun is like kryptonite. And when I first get my first blast of sun, like when I take a trip like this, which doesn't happen that often.
You get burned?
No, I don't get burnt. And in the summer, the first couple of weeks of sun, I get eczema.
Oh, okay. So you use the Solve.
And bingo, bango, like clockwork. I know this is sort of gross, but right there, I got it right under my arms.
Yeah.
And right under my forearm.
New HD. It's we can use it to really show off Sam's eczema.
And
good
I travel now with the Salve with the Arnica, and it does 2 things. One, it stops the intense, insane itching. Now, listen, this is not what it's supposed to be used for. It's supposed to be used for muscles. But
it works for you.
But I have an absence of that. What I do have is is the eczema, and then it begins to sort of like I'm not going to get too detailed, but it separates and it starts to calm down. I mean, it takes a while.
We would not want you to get too detailed after you showed it on air.
Right.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is sunsetlakesebede.com. They've got tinctures. They've got pre-rolls, which also, I have to say, was very important to me during the vacation to Disney. Dad would take a walk. I'll be back in 15 minutes. And I enjoyed one of the pre-rolls just to chill because my kids were driving me crazy.
Sam in Central Florida with a CBD pre-roll.
There you go. But they have the pre-rolls, they have the keef, they have the flowers. They also have
the tincture's my favorite. I used it last night because I want
help you sleep.
I got up early for a workout, wanted to make sure I got a good sleep. It worked.
It works big. And they have a couple of flavors on that: citrus, original, and mint. They also have fudge with CBD. They have coffee with CBD. They have hand lotion, hemp hand lotion, all of their products. You can find out what's inside it by checking on their website. They have a third-party analysis of it. Great company, great business practices, and they chose the coupon code Left is Best for 20% off. Check it out now. All right. Want to, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Wilfred Codrington, Assistant Professor of Law at Brooklyn Law School, to talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has been nominated to the Supreme Court. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report, and joining us, Wilfred Codrington. He is an assistant professor of law at Brooklyn Law School. Thanks so much for joining us, Wilfred. I'm here, obviously, with Emma Vigeland.
Thank you, Sam and Emma, for having me.
All right, so it's official as of I guess Friday. That Ketanji Brown Jackson is Joe Biden's nominee. There were two other, I think, potential nominees that were at least getting most of the attention. give us a sense of where Ketanji Brown Jackson is. Let's just look at her record in a vacuum, and then let's put it in the context of the Supreme Court.
Sure. So, and just to mention, it seemed like the two other top contenders were Judge Childs, who comes from a federal district court in South Carolina, and Justice Leandra Kruger, who has an appellate background and is a state Supreme Court justice for California. Judge Ketanji Jackson, I would have to say I thought was the easy choice. In terms of her background, she graduated with this sort of Tony prestigious background that you would see for other justices on the Supreme Court. So she went to Harvard for undergrad, graduated with honors, went to Harvard for law school, graduated with honors, was on the law review as an editor. From there, she served in 3 prestigious federal clerkships, including for the Supreme Court, clerking for the justice who she would replace. She worked in the private sector and the public sector. She'll be the first public defender to ever serve in the position of Supreme Court justice. Notably, Thurgood Marshall was a defense attorney, but he was never a public defender. She worked at the U.S. Sentencing Commission for nearly 5 years. She was the vice chair of that agency. That agency notably handles the sort of recommendations for federal sentencing guidelines. She was a federal trial court judge for 8 years, an appellate judge for about a year, and now being recommended here. So, in terms of what she's done, in many regards, she looks like a very sort of the archetypal Supreme Court justice nominee, but in many regards, she's also very different. She has these elements that make her very different from other justices and will bring a life of experience, and professional and otherwise, with her to the bench.
In terms of basically what you're saying is, like, if you look at on paper, the pedigree is fairly typical. I mean, and to some extent, I mean, almost problematically so, right? I mean, like, people are starting to get the idea that maybe we shouldn't just have justices from Harvard and Yale on the bench. But like you say, would she be the first public defender? She was a public defender, my understanding, for about 2.5 years, and she did so because she was on the sentencing committee or commission and felt that she was just looking at numbers, had no idea how the system actually worked in practice. She became a public defender, and then at one point in DC, and then at one point was took the assignment to defend people in Guantanamo Bay as well.
Right. And so, look, I think you're going to have people try to tear apart different elements of her resume for one reason or another. But it's laughable to say, look, we have this dual Ivy graduate, and therefore that's problematic for the Supreme Court. When you look at the composition of the court in general, there are so many dual Ivy graduates. Now, there's one who is not, Justice Barrett, but like, that's the first in a really long time. And, to be honest, one of the sort of loudest voices for this was Senator Graham, who was pushing for Judge Childs. So there was a motivation behind there, right? But to me, to kind of flip that and say you are too qualified or something like that doesn't really pass the laugh test. In terms of her work leaving the Sentencing Commission to become a public defender, that I think speaks volumes of not only about her intellectual curiosity, but her commitment to actually marrying the practice of law with something that was sort of a little bit more theoretical and sort of a little bit more detached from the way that it impacts people's everyday lives. And so she was working at the Sentencing Commission and sort of, was instituting these policies without having that background to say, like, how this is going to impact the people who are the subject of the Sentencing Commission. So I think that is very laudable. And it's rare to have people who have that sort of in the weeds, pragmatic and practical experience that they can sort of implement at the highest levels.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. No, but okay. When did she do that? I mean, and the reason why I ask is, it became clear. I mean, certainly during the Obama administration, but I would imagine back even in the Clinton administration, that and certainly during the Bush administration, that there was a very rigid path that you took to get to the Supreme Court. And to make the decision to become a public defender, it seems to me, even though like it was quite clear from an early age that she wanted I mean, if you're heading to be a judge and you're clerking for a Supreme Court judge, the percentage of those people who want to be a Supreme Court judge is pretty high. To make that decision to do public defending, where again, there's no model for someone who's a public defender to become a Supreme Court justice, that to me, I find it even particularly impressive and interesting, I guess, that she made that decision, despite the fact that she couldn't have said, this is what's going to lock me in for something like that.
Right. And I think that is, again, that's laudable because somebody in her possession with her credentials and sort of blazing the paths that she did, that could have sort of taken her on a very different path. And it shows that she wasn't on this sort of straight and narrow, and there were other things driving her. So you talk about the climate in which she sort of left the Sentencing Commission. At the time, she was counsel, so she was a staffer to the commission, and then went to go take the position as a public defender. The climate was very much a sort of a more conservative, tough on crime sort of approach. And they sort of took these steps ultimately when she was back there to liberalize the Sentencing Commission guidelines, particularly for the crack cocaine disparity. So, like it shows that she wasn't clipping her wings by taking these professional opportunities that she thought useful, interesting, important, and impactful because she kind of had her eyes always set on the prize for a Supreme Court position.
Well, so, I mean, she clearly stuck out to me as the best of those three finalists based on what you're saying here. I mean, like the Lindsey Graham argument was in such bad faith, right? It was like the idea, Lindsey Graham has a real strong opinion about Ivy League graduates being on the Supreme Court when he had just confirmed Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, who not only went to Ivy League schools, went to the same damn high school. So like, spare me with that argument. But the Gitmo thing really sticks out to me because that seems particularly risky. If you're up for a Supreme Court nomination, Republicans might balk at that. There's already the groundwork being laid. Oh, she defended terrorists. Can you talk a little bit more about her work there? Because that was, for me, the thing that was my favorite part of her resume that I read.
Look, we live in a system where everybody is entitled to defense attorney, and it doesn't matter who you are. Some of the most incorrigible or people accused of the most incorrigible crimes are still afforded an attorney. And so for her to take that position, I think in coming as an attorney, it is one of these things that, sure, it probably presents some difficulties for you, but also professionally, you're guided by this lodestar that everybody deserves this. And so, this wasn't a problem before when she was nominated and confirmed to become a district judge. It was not a problem when she was nominated and confirmed to become an appellate judge. And now it just becomes the biggest problem in the world. I mean, it is problematic to raise this as a red flag when this has never been a red flag. And it's even more problematic to sort of raise this as a red flag when it is one of the most fundamental pillars of our criminal justice law center. So irrespective of who her defendants were at the time, she was doing the job, the highest calling of a professional in the legal profession.
And we should, I think, it's important to be clear here because sometimes people can make this a category error. There is a difference between the import and the notion of a right to defense in a criminal trial in terms of the way that reflects on lawyers versus the right of a corporation
to represent ExxonMobil.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right. I mean, because defense within a criminal defense case is a constitutional question, as opposed to like, you're not enhancing the system in any way. You're not protecting the system well, maybe you are, but not the constitutional system if you are representing some corporation or going in and arguing in front of the Supreme Court that slave labor is okay, by Nestle in another country or something like that. I mean, I just want to put a fine point on that, because sometimes those two ideas get conflated.
Yeah, and so it is ironic that of the scores, we're now, I guess we will be at 115 of Supreme Court justices, so many of them came from the corporate litigation practice, right? They just represented massive corporations, and really that is not what our system is supposed to be about. And certainly when we're talking about sort of criminal rights, right? We're looking at the Bill of Rights and the criminal rights procedural protections as protecting individuals, and particularly discrete individuals who are unpopular, right? And those are the people who need the most. And to be a defendant who got the sort of caliber of representation that somebody would have gotten from then attorney Jackson, that person would have been fortunate. And really that would have been an outlier, because that's not the sort of representation that most criminal defendants get in our system. So again, she's doing her professional job. She's probably doing it to the highest standards of the profession. And really that should not be a ding against her.
Where is she relative to Breyer's, right? I mean, to the extent that we can, so let's talk about her in the context of the Supreme Court, which involves also, to what extent do we know how she will function? It's one thing to be a trial court judge, but as an appellate judge, you get a sense of how, of the legal, her approach to legal doctrine, I guess, because in a functional manner, it's probably not going to make that, in terms of like where she votes, it's not going to make that much of a difference, right? In terms of Breyer and her, at least in the current makeup of the court. So what becomes important, it seems to me, is she, what kind of justice will she be in terms of providing toeholds for 20 years down the road, when she's like, I guess she'll be she'll be 70, 71, which would still put her, she'll still be, a fairly young justice as far as they goes. But maybe 20 years from now, maybe less, there'll be an opportunity to begin to unwind some of the stuff that I think this court is about to embark upon. Is she going to be the type of judge who's going to put like those toeholds there? What are the type of decisions or dissents, probably more likely, will she write? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, so I think one thing to note is that she's only been an appellate judge for about a year. So we don't really have a sense of what her sort of appellate reasoning will look like, but we do have 8 years of her writings on the bench, nearly 600 opinions as a district judge. And from what we can tell from those, she's very methodical. She's been reversed very few times at any point in time. She's been affirmed by a unanimous Supreme Court on one of her decisions where she was reversed at the appellate level. And so she's very careful, methodical, and approaches the law very soberly. But again, when you get to the Supreme Court, you are the last stop in the land in terms of our judicial hierarchy, and so we'll see what it looks like. But I do think that it will be interesting. Yes, she's not going to change the outcome, and particularly of some of the most decisive issues. She will be in a sort of 6-3 minority replacing her judge. She may have different views. It seems that she is somewhat of a pragmatist and a consensus builder, like her former boss. But I think it would be interesting to see her operate in a couple different outcomes. So one, there's a very important abortion case that's up at the court this year, will be decided this year. She will not be on the bench at that time, but the implications that will reverberate throughout the court system. And who knows, we will be seeing more abortion cases and reproductive rights cases. I think the way that she operates with two other women in the dissent and see what that looks over time will just be fascinating for an issue where she'll be pitted up against mostly men. I think it would be another interesting thing to see her sort of go toe-to-toe with Justice Thomas. And I say this as her being the other Black justice. And, she will be the other Black justice coming from a state that was the former Confederacy. She will have lived and grown up in the post-civil rights era. Her parents grew up in the segregated South. So it's a very different circumstance, but I think she comes with a perspective. And so when you get these important cases that come up, for example, you'll have the affirmative action case that comes up to the Supreme Court. What does her decision and her views on the issue look like compared to his? And we know that most on the right take their sort of pecking orders or their views from Clarence Thomas, who really, when you think about it, does not reflect where the majority of the Black America is on that issue. When we look at what the Supreme Court does in voting rights area, the Supreme Court just basically stayed at least a district court decision in Alabama about the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And they said that basically there was an there was a Section 2 violation for a gerrymander based on race. When Clarence Thomas has been actively trying to thwart Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act for decades now. So when she comes in, I'm curious what her perspective is going to be. Another justice coming from the stalwart South, looking at what voting and sort of Voting Rights Act was meant to do to protect Black people. I think she will make her voice very clear over time. I think like any other justice, she will probably come in taking baby steps and learning the ropes. But I think you're right. She'll be on there potentially for 2-3 decades and will be able to start setting some sowing some breadcrumbs and laying a path for where she wants to see the court go over time.
Can we just take a break and say how effed up it is that we are having to sort of read these tea leaves on a person coming to the Supreme Court and guess where she's going to be, what she's going to do, because we have a system where there are 9 people who can fundamentally change the relationship between government and the people. You mentioned Thomas has been after Section 2. Roberts was after Section 5 for decades, literally was doing that during the Reagan administration, was like, let's do this. Let's get rid of this stuff. And today, the court is, and maybe you can talk about this because it strikes at the heart of our regulatory state. It's been something that we've been talking about on this program for years. The non-delegation principle and the Chevron doctrine are all implicated, I think, in this case with the EPA. And in terms of real impact, it's like, how much mercury are we going to breathe? How much can we really constrain global warming? Will you talk about that dynamic in this case that we're hearing today? And I guess just the idea that hopefully this one of these 9 Supreme Court justices that maybe we'll get on will decide maybe government should be able to regulate poison stuff.
Right. And so I think there's kind of 2 questions, Jamari, in there. One is that we live in this system of judicial supremacy. And the fact, when we talk about, it being a problem that she went to the Ivy League and not being reflective of the United States. Well, nobody on that court is really reflective of the United States in that regard, right? The fact that you have 9 people who can determine what the Constitution says, irrespective of how the rest of us feel, irrespective of how the other branches think about, that's a lot of power. And so this becomes such a monumental decision with any president that makes this choice. So we have to set that aside because, there's real questions about what that means. But then you also talked about other doctrine that are sort of being picked at right now. You mentioned first when I mentioned the VRA, but you mentioned rightly that, since Chief Justice John Roberts was a baby attorney, he was going after that in the Reagan years. And now this non-delegation principle, which is actually I'm teaching to my con law students today. And the idea is how much authority we should be granting administrative agencies to make decisions about the health and well-being of everyday Americans. And so when we look at environmental decisions and we say, there's going to be X amount of pollutants in the air or in the water or what have you, and then you have a conservative sort of legal project trying to dismantle that and say, no, that's not what the statute is intended to mean. Congress didn't speak clearly enough. That's Congress giving away too much of its authority. This, that, and the other thing, these things are, supposed to be guided by original public meaning principles, and it's laughable to say they are. I think that that's really problematic. And so I think, she and the other members of who will likely be in the dissent on a lot of these cases will have their work cut out for them. But again, the project of the Constitution and interpreting the Constitution is a long-term project. You're passing batons from one person to another. And I think she understands the gravity of the position she's going to be coming in and the future, hopefully, that she will be looking forward to make her impact on that.
Do you think her vote, and I don't know, I seem to remember, maybe this was 15 years ago, I saw Pam Karlan, who's a law professor out, I think, from Stanford. I think we last saw her on the national scene. Maybe she was testifying in the run-up to the impeachment, the first impeachment. But she had said at a talk that I saw that no appointment to the Supreme Court was move the court left. For I think at that time like 30 or 40 years, and that may have changed with Sotomayor. I'm not quite sure. I can't recall. But when you look at Breyer and you look at to the extent that you can tell from Ketanji Brown Jackson, does that shift the court? To the extent that, anything's going to shift the court to the left. But does that slot become a little bit to the left?
So if I had to make a guess, and I think these sort of guesses are always sort of deadly, but if I did, I'd say maybe slightly. But we don't know. I think, this is the interesting thing about a judge like Judge Jackson. She has more experience on the bench than most anybody on the bench. I believe everybody on the bench coming into the position. So we know that she thinks like she's going to come in thinking about a judge, thinking about things rigorously in a nuanced way. And in that regard, it may depend on the substantive area. It may depend on the technical question. But I suspect she will be at least slightly to the left of her boss. But, those predictions are difficult to make, but that's not going to change the composition or the sort of ideological shift on the whole court. This court has gone rightward, as Professor Karlan, who teaches at my alma mater, has said. That has not moved the court. We've not moved to the left. The heydays of the court being to the left, the Warren era, is like far gone, and everything has shifted the court to the right since. And so these ideas that were minority decisions, laughable decisions, off-the-wall decisions, and theories are now actually being given effect. And we're seeing that happen slowly but surely, and frankly, I think even faster than I thought with the term that we're in right now. So we'll see, but I think she will sort of at least help ground the liberal end of the court.
What was her corporate practice? Do you know?
She had a few years in big law. And I don't, in that regard, that's not very different than most any others, but she left, which I think actually is. She left big law before becoming a justice. Like many of the judges are just plucked right out of big law. And so in that regard, I think soon to be Justice Jackson will look more like the current Biden nominees. Biden is picking a more diverse set of judges, more women, more people of color, more people with professional experience and backgrounds as non-prosecutors and non-partners in law firms. So in that regard, she is very different, that she didn't sort of take that straight and narrow path, or the path that was only for her own her own benefit. Of limited practice in big law, but practice nevertheless, but informed hopefully by the totality of her experiences as a legal professional.
I have one more question on the non-delegation doctrine, since you're teaching it today. When you look at this, like, do you have a sense, as someone who watches the Supreme Court as intently as you do you have a sense of like what their plan is? Like, you say breadcrumbs, but really on many respects, it's like building blocks, right? Yeah. Or in this instance, they're building blocks to tear something down. But what do you anticipate? Do you have a notion of what path they would take? Like, in other words, here I can anticipate in this case, they did this with the OSHA thing with the vaccine mandates. They didn't seem to hit on necessarily any big principle, but they narrowed what constituted a workplace threat, right? I mean, they basically said a workplace threat has to be unique to the workplace, as opposed to the idea of coming to work increasing a threat that may exist outside in society. And the implications of that are pretty huge, right? Like, well, guns are dangerous outside of society, so you can't say that people just waving a gun around at workplace is dangerous, because it's dangerous if you go outside. But it's not necessarily the relationship between Congress and OSHA, let's say. What do you anticipate they're going to try and do with this case to ultimately get to that point where they sever the ability of an EPA, of an FDA, of an SEC, we could just go on, to use their expertise to carry out the spirit of a law that is passed by Congress?
Right. So this is the thing. I don't think it is one case in particular. I think any case that gets there that is an administrative law case, the court is going to use, at least the conservatives in the court are going to use any principle that they can pull out to actually dismantle it. And so one of the things we saw was this sort of quote unquote major questions doctrine. The idea that if there's a major issue that Congress wants a regulatory agency to tackle, they'll give them very clear and explicit authority to do that. And that sort of the broad language giving a broad discretion to an agency is not enough. Now you talk about the non-delegation doctrine, and that's the idea that Congress cannot give too much of its power, or a certain portion or type of its power, just to administrative agencies. And so, where we need technical expertise and sort of careerists to actually guide what our everyday regulations look like, they're not going to be able to do that because Congress obviously doesn't legislate at that granular level. And so I think this is really part and parcel of a larger agenda, which is to get rid of, or at least to neuter, the administrative state, right? And so this idea that we don't need this fourth branch, if you will, actually making decisions for us and making the sort of informed decisions for us about what is helpful and useful and safe for us to live our day-to-day lives. And this has been a project for a very long time. There was a case that I just taught to my students, this Gundy case. And, it was basically talking about delegation and whether, in a specific sex registration statute, whether Congress gave too much authority to the Attorney General. And lo and behold, they didn't want to use that vehicle because we were talking about sexual people who had to register for sexual crimes. But it was very clear from what the conservatives said. They basically said, we need another case to actually effectuate what we want to do. That is to say, we don't want to take a sort of sex offender to be the poster boy for what we're doing to dismantle the administrative state. And so I think what they're seeing with these environmental cases and OSHA cases and any other case that comes under the ABCs of the federal government, they'll use those to employ any doctrine, whether longstanding or sort of made up in the moment, to actually dismantle the administrative agency and neuter the federal government, knowing very well that Congress doesn't pass laws and won't pass laws at that level of granularity.
We should say, when you talk about destruction of the administrative state, it was 5 years almost to the day at CPAC that Steve Bannon announced that was the agenda of the Trump administration. 3 Supreme Court justices later, we are maybe not at mission accomplished, but maybe at mission accom. And
we're well along in the project. That's correct.
All right, lastly, let me just ask you this question. This scenario, the nomination hearings happen over the course of the next couple of weeks, and she's nominated, she's confirmed, and Senator Dianne Feinstein, or let's say Senator Patrick Leahy, he passes away or something like that, and control of the Senate goes to Mitch McConnell by hook or crook. Is she still, when Breyer retires in, let's say, June or August or whenever it is she the Supreme Court justice, or can McConnell say, wait, no, we're going to have new hearings?
So this is an interesting question. I think procedurally it's going to happen in a way to avoid that outcome. Notably, there is a very young senator from New Mexico who recently had a stroke. And so the dynamic in the Senate already could have shifted in this weird way. We hope that he is getting well, and then he'll be on his way to be here for this vote and other votes. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to have the Senate go through the processes and basically vote and then hold her commission until the end. And that way she will have been voted on. And if anything happens afterwards, she will still have the right, because that's when she takes the seat, is when her commission is delivered to her. So I think they're trying to avoid that.
Justices.
They can. I just don't think that they felt was that sort of imperative. Or, for example, when it was Justice to be Justice Merrick Garland, who Ketanji Jackson actually replaced on the DC circuit when he became Attorney General, they didn't have the votes, and so that wasn't necessary. It wasn't sort of like as closely divided. And I think, having learned from those experiences, that will probably be the protocol going forward.
With Merrick Garland, they didn't control the Senate, so they couldn't have hearings. But I'm saying, why can't, after Ketanji Brown Jackson is confirmed by the full Senate, assuming you could get Manchin or Sinema on board, I mean, just put aside the question of the specific senators, why can't Chuck Schumer say, you know what? Let's have another one in reserve. Someone could die. Someone could get hit by a bus. We're going to confirm 2 more Supreme Court justices, and they just stockpile. But I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't understand what the mechanism is any different.
Yeah, and I guess there could be this world where you theoretically vote for like 9 replacements of the current justices. But I'm that I cannot answer for you. I think it's probably gonna have to do with this like limitation on the number of justices that you have at any point, and that you have to have an actual recognized vacancy stated and delivered to the president before they go forward. I'm pretty sure that is exactly why they're limited.
That's right, but I mean, is that a statute? Like, I mean, is it like we need a resignation letter before we can confirm somebody?
Yeah, well, the president can't make his nomination of the successor until there actually is a vacancy resigned to him. And so that is the sort of building block. In your world, I love your world, where the president just makes 9 appointments right now and then just has them holding into perpetuity until we get those vacancies. But there has to be an announced vacancy and an officially announced vacancy to the president before you can actually make a replacement nomination.
All right. Well, I tried. Professor,
I like your Senate.
Yeah, great. Tell me about it.
Well, the point is, I think, like, bend the rules because Republicans have done so, and I'm not opposed to like that kind of a thinking, obviously.
If there's a way to do it, I think we should be doing it. Wilfred Codrington, Assistant Professor of Law at Brooklyn Law School, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam and Emma. Nice being with you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, folks. First day back and went long in the fun in the free half.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Knew that was coming.
Something tells me we're going to be going long in the fun half too.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Huh.
Folks, I've got some bad news.
What?
I got some bad news and I got some good news. The bad news is the Brooklyn show has sold out. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's good news for us.
My final
but it's bad news for you.
Did it.
We sold out the Brooklyn show sometime last week. And I knew we would. I knew we would. The good news is still seats for the Boston show. The Boston venue is 3 times the size as the Brooklyn venue. I think in Brooklyn, it's like 350 seats. In Boston, it's like 1,000 and something. Well, maybe that's 3 times. Yeah, exactly. And so you can still get tickets to go see the Boston show. The Boston show is going to be much better.
Okay.
I'm joking. I'm joking. But you go to MajorityLive.com. You get tickets to the Boston show.
There are like a million different like special guests in the Boston show.
The Boston show could be just epic. And then the Brooklyn show is going to be super fun. But Boston show is going to be, what? Seriously?
So the point is that there's truth in your joke.
Maybe.
Huh. All right.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the Brooklyn show is better than the Boston show. But we may also have something going on with the Brooklyn show. I'm going to talk about that later.
Oh, okay.
But, folks.
Trying to get Kyrie Irving.
It is, well, after they get rid of the vaccine mandate, we could do that.
Soon enough, right? Adam says any moment now.
Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Honestly, members these days are making up something like 92.3% of our revenue. I made up that number.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't do that math. But it's our members that make it possible for us to do this show. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, tomorrow I'm going to be more explicit about this, but I think we got something cooking. Get your AM Quickie subscription now.
Whoa.
And you can get it for free at amquickie.com. You know, Jack Crosby, who you had on last week, one of the writers of the AM Quickie, I saw him on MSNBC this weekend.
Wow.
He was in a garage in, he's not in Kyiv. He's in the, I think in the second or where?
He's in Kharkiv. Yeah.
Kharkiv. And I think they've made him a contributor for his
good. Kharkiv is, you know, right now one of the hearts of the fighting right now.
Yeah, apparently they're just dropping cluster bombs down there. So hopefully Jack is safe. Maybe we're going to get a chance to talk to him again this week. But in the meantime, Corey is holding down the fort on the AM Quickie. So check that out. Corey's in touch with Jack, and hopefully he's safe. But go and you can subscribe to the AM Quickie by going to amquickie.com, putting your email in there, and we will never sell your email address to anybody. So there's that.
Yep.
Don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Did you do the Just Coffee pitches?
I did. I should write it down because it's like not, for some reason, it doesn't stick in my memory in the way.
Oh my God, it is imprinted on my brain. It's the only thing I've been saying for 10 years.
Right. Well, it's getting
12. They started sponsoring Break Room Live.
Wow.
14 years.
Well, I do love their coffee.
Justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, you get 10% off. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media empire?
We had a really excellent guest for Left Reckoning patrons yesterday. Mark Kruger, who wrote the book The St. Louis Commune of 1877. It talks about how on the occasion of the 1877 Great Rail Strike, that there's a bunch of German Marxists and also anarchists and a whole bunch of radicals. 60% of St. Louis was foreign-born at the time, and they took the Great Rail Strike as an opportunity to take over the entire city of St. Louis for like 5 days or so. So we talked about that. A pretty incredible little slice of history. A lot of
like the Jacobins.
It was like Jacobins, but it also like it was cross-racial. A whole bunch of like different types of immigrants and black folks there. And it was like, you know, Marx inspired, and there's a lot of like red baiting there too, because the Paris Commune was a few years before, and then you also had the 1848 revolutions, which is what inspired a lot of the sort of German, particularly immigrants that showed up in St. Louis. So a radical history that I was unaware of, and
I'm completely unaware of that.
And but it also goes into my favorite sort of like, you know, we all have our different obsessions with Reconstruction, and my thing is how the Union and Confederate sort of like military came together in part in North Dakota to like take to go to war with the Sioux, Lakota. But in this case, it was like, let's come together to put down a workers strike. And
there you go. It's nice to bring people together. It's always nice to do that.
So patreon.com/leftreckoning to get that interview.
Check that out. That is one I'm definitely.
We should get him on here, actually.
Yeah, I would like to do that. It sounded so fascinating. I saw it on Twitter last night when I was coming out of my post-Disney stupor. We had to get up at 4 a.m.
Jeez.
Friday morning. And I got news for you. Like,
to fly back?
Yeah, well, we took a 7 a.m. flight because it was the only flight I could get.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I'm not gonna. Saul and I were sharing a bed, and it was like a small bed, and you know, I had to put pillows in between us because he kicks.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it's gonna take me like a week to get over
vacation from your vacation.
No kidding. No kidding. Folks, see you in the fun half. 646-257-3920. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomiki.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians. They're so stupid though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say. 857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes to satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. And the hang up bigger. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. The voicemail is now off.
The gates are open.
The gates are open. The gates to please relay a story about you and Saul debating in Disney.
Debating?
I imagine Saul owns you in debate frequently. Total slot for Sam. What did he do that was like, there was a couple of things he said to me that were spot on. Oh, yeah. Yeah. By midweek, I had a competition who had the best line of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at this, some type of like, Saul loves animals. So Animal Kingdom was the highlight.
Did you do a safari?
We did the safari.
That's fun.
And we're looking at, but in a walking tour, because they had a couple walking. It's like a big zoo. There was we saw this vulture, big vulture.
Oh,
and I go, and Saul is all about birds, and so he knows a lot about birds and animals. He just does. And so I said, the vulture like put its arms out. And I was like, whoa, look at the size of that wingspan. And Saul says, he's going to be 9 and very soon. He says, oh, Dad, stop trying to sound sophisticated like you know about birds. Like all I said was wingspan. I was so proud of that, though.
He's already negging you.
Yep. I was like, dude, I'm going to put that, I'm going to inscribe that in like gold lame on a plaque and put it on my, Brett from North Georgia. Hey there, MR crew. Unfortunately, I have some insight into what life is like on the front lines of the Russo-Ukrainian war. My friend's brother still lives in Ukraine with his wife and kids, specifically Kharkiv, the second largest city in the country that has been one of the hardest hit with fighting. They had the opportunity to leave the country, but did not because of the restrictions on fighting age males from leaving. They stayed. The kids wouldn't leave without their dad. So now they're in a dirt floor cellar, and they have for several days with a few other families. They have written their contact information and their relatives' contact information on the inside of their and their kids' clothes in case the unspeakable happens. They are running low on food and water. It's getting harder and harder to come by. People have left to get water, and they're not coming back. Jesus. Sounds of rockets and shelling has been getting louder. War is a horrific experience, and we're doing what we can to help. But it's a very helpless feeling. I only hope that people can see how this conflict has hurt so many. Translate that to other places throughout the world that have already been ravaged by imperialistic conquest. Yes, I think that is, I couldn't agree more with all those sentiments. And, best of hope for all the people in Kharkiv and the entire country. I mean, it really is a horror show. Horrible. Inland Navy, tan cedar. Turkish Martha Stewart. I want to say good job on all your coverage of Ukraine. I know there was some criticism leveled at you, and I think I had my own nitpicks overall. But overall, I think you did a very good job, especially in Sam's absence, and should generally be proud of how you did.
Thank you.
Cascade and Nafa. Just want to plug No Nation Truck on Twitter. They're trying to provide aid for refugees on the Polish-Ukrainian border. They have a donation page where you support them in transporting refugees to safety and providing material aid. Tomorrow, we'll have a list of places like that. And just want to plug at Crim Ethnics piece on Operation Solidarity, which goes into detail on the Ukrainian leftists who are organizing the resistance to the Russian invasion. There's some links on how to support them. Picky Go team. Sam, you Mickey wanking goofy effer. Weren't you supposed to go on vacation? You look like you got continuously bicycle kicked in the face for 9 straight days. That's actually true. Anyway, I love the show and welcome back. You GNEWTF. Grant Pod, nobody ever wanted to F. Thank you. Truck Nuts 420. Hey, MR crew. The U.S. has started to bomb Somalia again as part of its seemingly unknown 15-year war in the area between U.S. and al-Shabaab. This happens after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced the decision to restrict visas to current or former Somali officials and others believed to be responsible for, there's a quote, or complicit in undermining the democratic process in Somalia. There's very little news coverage of this as the world has eyes on Ukraine. So I'd like to just mention that no imperialism is good imperialism, whether it's perpetrated by Russia or the U.S. Keep up the good work. Left is best. Yes. Tomorrow we were planning on covering that a little bit. We're going to have Matt Duss on, who I believe is still the senior policy advisor on foreign policy for Bernie Sanders. Is that right? Is he still with we'll be talking about Somalia, obviously, among other things. But that is, what I've been struck by is that yes, there has been, on one hand, there has been a complete absence of being able to draw a parallel between what we're seeing with Russia invading and attacking Ukraine with what we did in Iraq, frankly, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in what we're doing in terms of Yemen and in terms of Somalia, also with the Israelis and Palestinians. Like it's almost as like, they operate in completely different vacuums. And when we spoke a little bit up front as to what at least part of that is a function of. At the same time, too, the idea of leveraging the injustice and the horror of U.S. imperialism as a way of justifying Russian imperialism is also perverse and warped. Russian imperialism, and let's be clear, Putin has stated that he wants a greater Russia.
Yeah, and he does not believe that he believes in the myth of Ukraine essentially having no sovereignty.
He doesn't believe it's a real country.
Yeah.
And that is imperialism too. That imperialism is not good imperialism just because it's not American imperialism.
And if you're not at this point, if you're not there at this point, then there's something wrong with your perspective, I think. I mean, like
you're mentally deranged.
No, I'm just saying that you need to okay. You want to go there? Go there.
I don't know.
I mean, I just think that you need to re-examine where your focus at this current moment, if you aren't where Sam is saying you should be. And I'm saying
U.S. imperialism is not the only imperialism. In fact, the U.S. did not invent imperialism. At one point, there was a Russian empire. I mean, just also, and if you think that, Ukraine's not really a country, all that Putin is doing, are you okay with that with the Ottoman Empire too? Well, what about the British Empire? Where do we start drawing the lines here?
Let's go back to the Roman Empire.
I mean, yeah. Are we going to see, we going to allow for Italy to resume its place on the world stage?
At least we'd have more pasta.
I mean, honestly, not sure they had pasta. Well, maybe.
I'd be happier with that than Russian food everywhere.
I mean, it's just absurd. It's just absurd. Morella. Sam looks very spiffy today, suntanny and rested. The vacation agreed with him. You are wrong.
He's just not rested.
You are wrong. I can, when I get up off this chair, I can barely stand up straight.
Yeah, well, we witnessed it. You need an icy hot. That's what Shaq says.
God.
Spokesperson for all products.
Laura, Pandora Papers, Credit Suisse, and other data information of tax avoidance and offshore banking. World leaders need to get serious on this issue with what with discussion on Russian money laundering in London with no action taken. What would be nice is if there was an opportunity to leverage this. Look, the oligarchs are not going to put pressure on Putin. Putin puts pressure on the oligarchs. Okay. That does not mean I don't think that we shouldn't sanction the hell out of them. There was a great story out of, and you know, who knows if it is, I don't know how to assess the validity of this story coming out of Mallorca. Apparently a Ukrainian sailor mechanic sunk a Russian oligarch's yacht, or left it sort of dysfunctional. But I
like that imagery.
I like the imagery of it too. But here, let's play that clip. Do we have that clip? This is from a couple of days ago, where Putin was basically showing like, hey, let's put our Zoom on, publicize it. Do we have that clip of Putin?
What are you talking about?
When his intelligence secretary got up, remember we talked about that? And just to give you a sense, the billionaire oligarchs have their money because of Putin. And the dynamic is not that they're going to pressure Putin. I think, if anything, if there's going to be any outside or internal force that's going to stop Putin, it's probably going to be more a military type of situation.
Yes. Well, I mean, also Putin, according to some of the people we interviewed last week, he spent years attempting to sanction-proof Russia's economy to isolate them a bit from what's happening. And so, like, the oligarchs are protected to some degree, even though they have lost billions over the past week or so.
Right. But this is a good opportunity to maybe go after all the billionaires. You know, like we start with the Russian billionaires and let's just move our way to do all the billionaires.
And have all these conversations right now.
Exactly.
And the reason that they they were sheltered, many Russian oligarchs, by Europe's and the United States' terrible tax systems that allow for billionaires globally to hide a lot of their money and get away with the hoarding all these billions.
Campaign finance.
Yes.
And listen, I think the best way for us to show that we're not just targeting, Bradley, we're not just targeting Russian oligarchs, is to seize the assets of all billionaires. And I think that is, I mean, honestly, like this is, well, here, I just want to show this. This is a clip from a week ago. It gives you a sense. Apparently, the guy speaking is an intelligence secretary and who has been working with Putin for decades. Like, this is a buddy. This is basically like, and watch how Putin just sort of like humiliates this dude for even raising anything that is in some way like slightly divergent from what Putin wants here.
О том, что нашим, так сказать, западным партнерам можно дать
we can give our Western partners one last chance.
С тем, чтобы предложить им в кратчайшие сроки заставить Киев пойти на мир и выполнить Минские соглашения. В противном случае
they can sign up for the Minsk agreement one more time.
То решение, о котором сегодня говорится.
Значит, в противном случае вы предлагаете начать переговорный процесс?
Нет, я...
Okay, pause it for a second. Now, the Minsk agreement, Ukraine has sort of backed off, and the West has sort of backed off this agreement.
Yeah,
failed to uphold it in terms of the relationship. You know, after Russian separatists took essentially the eastern part of Ukraine, and Russia took Crimea. This would have been sort of the equilibrium And this guy is basically
he's shitting his pants right now. Yeah,
he's shitting his pants because he is having the audacity of saying,
yes,
hey, let's see, now's a good time for them to sign on to the Minsk agreement. And Putin is like, no. And just go back a little bit. It is.
And that's why the NATO conversation too, it set up the conditions for this, but it's like way past the point of where Putin is in this for imperialism in and of itself at this point.
Here we go.
В противном случае мы
in the worst case, we have to make the decision we are discussing today. In other words, worst case is war. What does that mean in the worst case? Are you suggesting we start negotiations?
Нет, я
No. Or recognize sovereignty?
Говорите прямо.
Я поддержу предложение о признании.
Поддержу или поддерживаю? Говорите прямо, Сергей.
Поддерживаю предложение.
Так и скажите, да или нет.
Поддерживаю предложение о вхождении Донецкой и Луганской народных республик в состав Российской Федерации.
Да, мы об этом не говорим, мы этого не обсуждаем. Мы говорим о признании их независимости или нет.
Да, я поддерживаю предложение о признании независимости.
Хорошо, пожалуйста, садитесь. Спасибо. Владимир Александрович.
Take your seat.
Here, little pat on the head. Bye now.
But I mean, it was like, you know, the idea that you're talking about negotiations here, the independence for those two regions, and this is a guy he's worked with for 20 years. Like, there's nobody who's going to intimidate Putin at this point, or even question him. And that's the dynamic that's going on here. It's scary. It's really scary.
When he sat forward like that, he was going down. Yeah. I mean, I'm not laughing. I'm just laughing at that guy, like, but it's a terrifying situation, obviously.
I mean, we'll talk more about this with Dust, but I think there's just like a lot of assumptions that have been made on all sides that were completely wrong. I think the Ukrainians never thought that Putin would do this because they know how absurd it is. He can't occupy. I mean, the idea that he's going to come in and literally kill Zelensky and replace him with a sort of a puppet regime seems to me like when they invaded Czechoslovakia decades ago now, 68, I think it was it 68 that they came in, or was that the Czechoslovakian just revolted at that point? Well, I think it was with the Czechoslovakia. They came in 68. There was they had 250,000 troops, if I remember correctly. Czechoslovakia is a small country, incidentally. And
68.
And I would imagine their military was also like, they just fought a world war 20 years earlier. There was a lot of institutional memory there of success. I don't think they're in a position to control a country.
Yeah.
And so I think people were like, there's no way they're coming in here and doing something like that.
The Onion headline was, U.S. shocked Russia would invade another country after seeing how badly America's recent invasions went.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think Putin, he had these assumptions about that he was going to be greeted with candy and flowers.
To denazify from like the far right elements that are there, and he overestimated the amount of pro-Russian sentiment even in the like regions that tilt towards him, like Kharkiv.
I think so. It's pretty clear, and I think, frankly,
or tilt towards that, I should say.
Everyone probably underestimated Zelensky.
Yeah.
Well, watch this. Let's put this video up. Did you guys play this one? Where this is from Friday, and I really am struck by this guy. He's 40, there is a difference between like the communication skills of younger people, of digital natives.
And he's as an actor. He was an actor before this, so he has a way of communicating that's, I think, like very helpful in this crisis situation. Plus the fact that he's sticking around.
Versus Putin trying to do some weird apprentice style like takedowns of his advisors.
Yes. Yeah, humiliating them publicly.
I mean, if you're in show business, I would say take 10 years off of your age in terms of your social media savvy. And so this guy's got this, the savvy of a millennial, I think, when it comes to social media. I mean, you look at like this idea, like he knows how to perform the president. He knows how he's coming off
because he literally did that.
But this is not,
and it's not just performative. I just mean like it's also incredibly brave, but it's the optics that are necessary during wartime and an invasion.
But someone in a different generation thinks we can't do a selfie. That doesn't look presidential. And like when you look at and apologies to me and people my age and older, when you look at older people when they're doing a selfie, it's like, look at me, I'm doing a selfie. Mm-hmm. Like there's this quality of like, when cell phones first came out, you'd get calls from people going like, you can't believe where I'm calling you from. I'm calling you from my car. And it's like, oh my God, right. Who cares? I got nothing to talk to you about, but I just want you to know I'm calling from a car.
So sick.
There's a quality of selfies that are done by people who are not digital natives. Mm-hmm. That is just like, like, I can't believe I'm doing a selfie. He knows like the issue is not that he's doing a selfie. The selfie doesn't make it like most presidents.
I mean, you're even saying it's doing a selfie. Like I just
exactly
right.
Exactly.
You're proving your point.
Presidents would say, I'm not going to take a selfie. It's going to seem unpresidential. So just here, watch this. This is pretty. I think this is impressive. And the problem it's creating for Putin is that like there's no. It's done. Like right. He could take out Zelensky now, but Zelensky is going to live further than this.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут. Голова офісу президента тут. Прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут. Подоляк тут. Президент тут. Всі ми тут. Наші військові тут. Громадяни суспільства тут. Всі ми тут. Захищаємо нашу незалежність. Нашу державу. Так буде й далі. Слава нашим захисникам. Слава нашим захисницям. Слава Україні.
Yeah, and so also when the fact that he's clearly, on the ground, it's doing a bit guerrilla style adds to it as well. I'm in this with you. I'm in this with you.
Yep.
And so and there isn't the, old school presidenting that you talk about where it's like you're above holding your phone to communicate directly with people. It feels more intimate.
Kind of relatedly, there's a article in The Guardian. The first TikTok war, how Russia's influences in Russia and Ukraine are responding. Some of Russia's biggest names in the digital war sphere have spoken out against the war. The daughter of Dmitry Peskov, Vladimir Putin's press secretary, posted a message reading "No to War" on her Instagram story before quickly deleting it. Max Galkin, the husband of Ella Pugacheva and one of Russia's biggest stars, posted a black square on Instagram and the message "No to War" to his 9.4 million followers. And it's just interesting. There's a couple other instances of this too.
The tennis star who wrote on the camera, that's like another viral moment that's going to just chip away at this.
And there's also been on Twitter, like you're seeing some like, Russian public intellectuals who've said this as well. And one of my fears, and this is something we'll talk to Dus about, is that, and I mentioned this earlier, that if there's an opportunity to give Putin an off-ramp, so that he can pull back and there's, with saving face, I worry that NATO, the West, may see like, well, maybe there's an opportunity here to not give him an off-ramp, make him go forward and see if if domestic pressure weakens Putin, domestic Russian pressure.
Yeah.
And I worry about that. That is the road to escalation. And hopefully that doesn't happen. But it's not hard for me to believe that there aren't people in our government and other governments, Western governments, who want to take advantage of this to weaken Putin. And that's scary.
The panic is over oil prices, though, right now, which might deter them from wanting to like elongate this for a slow bleed out of Putin. There's going to be, I mean, the fact that Biden seems unable to move Saudi Arabia is an issue, especially in the short term. He's going to take a hit domestically. They're already getting, I mean, you missed this last week, but this is domestic drilling, more domestic drilling. This is the drumbeat that's going to happen from both centrist and right-wing media. So withstanding that, I don't know. I think some leaders are going to be in a panic. Europe too, based on their Russian oil dependence.
Calling from a 651 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. First time, long time. My name's John. I'm from Minnesota.
John from Minnesota.
I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry if there's a clanging in the background. I'm currently driving for my job.
All right.
Yeah. I just want to say I appreciate what you guys do. Out of everyone, you seem to be probably the sanest of all the pundit commentators that are out there, besides a couple of, other people here and there. But really, I just wanted to put an idea across that. Sorry, first time, long time.
No worries.
So a friend of mine and me were talking about how to basically curb the power of the military-industrial complex. Pretty heavy idea, I know. But we basically came down to the idea that we need to create a public reserve currency instead of a Federal Reserve currency that is basically used to incentivize buying of sustainable products, solar panels, windmills, anything that
subsidies
contributes. Yeah, subsidies, anything that contributes to, helping curb global warming and, the climate change problem. So, we were basically trying to figure out if creating a new currency backed with, say, a public reserve instead of the fiat, petrodollar, that would be more transparent. You could use it for funding politicians that are for, Green New Deal type bills. Basically using a new currency to incentivize our, progressive ideals.
But why does it have to be a new currency is my question.
Well, we were talking about cryptocurrency and how it's changed the playing field more or less.
Okay.
And how
how has it changed the playing field?
It's made people realize that currencies can basically be whatever we want it to be. And as long as it's controllable as long as it's transparent, it's a valuable currency.
Crypto's not transparent at all, though, dude.
Well,
and none of those things actually operate like currency.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. Have we really developed new currencies, or have we just created these things that are tradable commodities?
Yeah.
I mean, yes to both. Really?
No, not to the currency thing. You can't. You don't use those as a currency. They fluctuate too much in value. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Absolutely. I'm not saying that we should use a cryptocurrency as the new currency. It needs to be cash. It needs to be able to be used by the regular people as a cash currency. I'm not saying that we just make a new cryptocurrency that the public uses. I'm saying it needs to be a cash-based currency.
But my point, though, is I like your idea of having a reserve, maybe based on, like, say, taxes of billionaires, a fund for a transition to clean energy. But frankly, dude, like, the creation of a currency is completely unnecessary for this idea that you're proposing, which I do think at its core is a good one.
And the thing is that if you don't have the government involved, like, where does this thing? The only thing that's going to retain its value, that's going to keep it valuable, is the idea that it's going to be worth more in the future, right? I mean, that's the only reason why people buy Bitcoin right now. It's because
it's going to be worth more because the things that are currencies based on now are going to be eventually worth less.
Why?
Like, it's kind of like it's just basic entropy. Like the things that are currencies attached to, like,
land,
basically holding the petrodollar, like basically.
Well, no, I know the petrodollar, but land, everything else is also in dollars. I mean, at least in this country.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's the way it is right now. But like
taxes,
we can basically come to
taxes.
But like, if we can come to a consensus that like the money that is being used right now is being used for the benefit of the oligarchs and for the benefit of like the people in charge, and you can make a counter currency.
It's not the currency. It's not the problem.
But wait a second. But what's to prevent that counter currency that you're talking about that's going to have more value? If I'm an oligarch, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy a lot of that too.
I mean, ideally there would be, I mean, I'm not saying I have all the, I'm not an economist, I'm a graphic designer. This is something me and my, idiot friend were talking about while we were getting intoxicated.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say intoxicated.
No,
Again, I said the core of the idea is pretty good, though. I mean, about the core.
You don't need a new currency.
You don't need the new currency part. Just
we need
cut
to
that
make
half
policy
off.
decisions that are different.
That's the thing is, like, we need to make money less important. So, for instance, like, it needs to be not something you pull out of pocket, for instance, if you go into a hospital. Like, those are the problems we need to start solving. And I think, like, a creation of a new currency, like, I think we just need to make currency less important and decommodify.
The crypto part was when you, like, took one extra hit, right, dude?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Like I think like this is just why frankly I'm a little bit critical of crypto, because I think it leads to focus on the wrong things that are actually in the way of this. Like, right, like I made a joke tweet, like I created a new technology called MFTs that's going to be liberating for artists and people who don't work, and it stands for Medicare.
I'm an artist too, so I almost totally bought into NFTs, but I held back on it.
But you stepped on my punchline. My punchline was MFTs stands for Medicare for totally everyone. And wouldn't that do way more for you and all your artist buddies if we did that, as opposed to like maybe like buying the right, cartoon monkey, right?
Yeah, and also canceling all the student debt that I accrued getting my graphic design degree.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So.
Appreciate the call, man.
But yeah, no problem, man. Have a good one. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
Rest in peace, Michael. Yep, have a good one.
I mean, student loans is another thing that just should not have been commodified in the first place, and it's causing such problems that it is.
The David Dayen has a great piece on shitting all over Larry Summers in the Times today. But the thing that really just strikes me,
Dayen's in the Times.
Yeah, he's been right. This is the second opinion piece he's had in there, at least by my count. And he I can't remember the specific number, but it's astonishing. Over the past 30 years, the level of financialization in terms of dominating our economy, which, if I remember correctly, I think was also cited in Jared Diamond's, was it Jared Diamond's collapse or the other one? There was another book about when you get to a certain level of financialization in your economy, things can go south very quickly, very, very quickly. Calling from a 702 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. Welcome back. It's Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas.
Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas. How are you? What's on your mind?
I'm pretty good. What's going on, Emma? What's going on, Matt? And I believe it was Jared. I believe it was Jared Diamond in Collapse. But also, there's another book, Sam, that kind of I read. I think one of you brought up was Randy Martin, The Financialization of Everything. That one's a good book too. It talks about that. It was in the 90s though. It came out in the 90s though, so it's like a precursor, but it kind of gives you like a snapshot of the era, everything being financialized. So it's actually really good. And but so was Jared Diamond's book too. It was really good. I just want to comment about like the Russia and Ukraine thing.
It's called the financialization of daily life. Sorry, keep going.
Yes, I'm sorry. Financialization of daily life by Randy Martin, correct?
Yeah.
I really feel like, two things. There's two things here. And shout out to Matt Leck because he kind of talked about this the other day. After this kind of whole Russia-Ukraine thing, we just need to transition to the Green New Deal. This is the perfect time to be like, hey, the oil, we're getting squeezed by, or our allies are getting squeezed by Russia, Saudi Arabia and everything. This is just like a red alarm, like, hey, we need the Green New Deal to get off this stuff. At a minimum, look, it's not for like war or anything, right? But at least we have more leverage if we, go to green technology and stuff, and we don't have to, argue with Russia or partner with Saudi Arabia. I think half of that is literally just due to the oil. Don't get me wrong, this geopolitics and stuff. I'm sorry.
At least half.
Yeah.
Yes. And, I just really feel like the Democrats, well, maybe not the left, but that's like the Democrats are just losing optics here, where it's like, listen, look, this is the perfect time to transition, go to Green New Deal and be pushing it.
Yeah, and
because at the end of the day, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm just agreeing with you. And it's not like, no one's saying, okay, tomorrow we cut off our dependence on oil. But like, I think maybe you're referencing a conversation between Matt and I about that Psaki clip where she just was on her heels when when Ducey was talking about, ramping up U.S. drilling and then this is all your fault because Keystone XL isn't flowing. At least reframe the conversation about that.
Right. No, precisely. No, absolutely. I mean, precisely. And the thing is, too, I just feel like now, like, don't get me wrong, it was like it's a dub, but like Larry Summers, Joe Biden, these guys are literally 20th century politicians. Like, they're just not up on the game. And, I just see so many opportunities where we could be pushing Green New Deal, or we could be transitioning off stuff. And the thing is, too, listen, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to pander to the Nat Sex Simpson, all those type of guys, but like, it's like, hey, look, if we transition, we don't have to deal with these guys. We don't have to deal with the genocidal Saudi Arabian government, or we have to do this stuff with Russia because of Nord Stream and all. And it's very, to me, the Democrats are dropping the ball on this big time. You know what I'm saying? Because this is a huge messaging opportunity and a huge opportunity to push the Green New Deal, or at least something to that effect, And the last thing, you guys come and I'll jump. I just want to say this too, because I see a lot of. Of course, I'm a fan of the show, but I've been listening to a lot of people calling about crypto. Listen, I'm into crypto. I even have a crypto mining rig. It's not the solution to anything. Just get your bag and move on. Don't try to mess it in with leftism. Don't try to say this. No. You're falling to the con. Listen, somebody's be left holding the bag. Okay.
Thank you.
It's just the nature. I'm telling you, everybody. Look, I'm not a crypto bro. I'm just trying to make my money. You know what I'm saying? Get your bag, move on.
Right.
Anyways, guys, left is best. Take care. Love you all.
It is like, I appreciate the call. It's like day trading in a way.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's like sports betting.
Yeah. Like a huge percentage of people are going to lose, but there's some who are going to win. And chances are those guys who win, they need you to enter in so they can win.
Well, no, that's what's different. Yeah.
That's the problem, right? Like, yeah, like I know people, I have friends very close to me who speculate in this sort of stuff. I don't like it, but the problem is when you start to sell it based on, this is what people in Gaza need, right? Or this is a future for artists. And no, it's a way for you to sell something and get cash in return for it.
Yeah.
It's a multi-level marketing scheme. It's like those women that got in really early with LuLaRoe and they all made bank, but like the 99% plus of the people below them, it's a pyramid scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. You're not going to make, most people, the overwhelming majority won't make money.
De'Aaron Fox, the point guard for the Sacramento Kings, has discontinued his Swipe of the Fox NFT collection because it's too much time. But he will send you a free jersey if you spend a few $1,000s and bought an NFT. So he'll sign the jersey as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, again, I feel bad that the athletes who just have a ton of money really quickly are getting duped into some of this stuff.
It's a way for celebrities to commodify the attention they get. I mean, that's why the CAA agency is all over this stuff.
The thick Putin. The MR crew is dead wrong on crypto, but right on most other things. Love y'all. Eric Berg, 59. It's not a good idea to discuss and compare conflicts this way. I don't know what you mean. I suggest to read up on geography and history in an area you discuss instead of repeating what you always love to say.
Oh, good to know that this was not just reserved to last week.
I don't understand what the point is.
Yeah, they forgot the.
There's a lot of experts all of a sudden.
They forgot the warrant to their claim in that message there.
This is just general. It's not a good idea to discuss and compare conflicts. What conflicts are we discussing?
At the start of the show, we were comparing the response to Ukraine versus Yemen.
Yeah, I'm not comparing conflicts. Talking about dead people.
Yeah.
Talking about people who die. You want to say, to the extent that I can understand the comment, that in some instances, it's legit for people to die in a war. And I'm suggesting that no, it's not legit. That when people die because they're on the other end of a bomb, that's bad. So I'm not comparing conflicts. I'm comparing the deaths of people. But incidentally, I've also read on the geography and the history. Soy Boy Professor, honest question. Do you think if we became less dependent on oil, that would make places like Russia more desperate and in turn raising the prospects for more war? I mean, it's not inconceivable for a country like Russia now, or 30% of its GDP, it's probably their biggest economic asset. I don't know if we in this country became independent, but if we went off that, yes, it would. It could increase desperation and create, more aggression. Unless the benefits that accrue, I mean, the problem is it's just like there's entities out there who want cash and resources, and we're doing it in a very inefficient way at this point in terms of like if you measure, human survival as efficiency, because in 100 years, it's going to be, we're going to have a similar crunch on resources. It's just the resources are going to be different. It's going to be like food and water and dry land. North Dakota Llama, tankies are in your chat. Whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in our chat. I hate when people say this, but it was the sort of thing last week where it's like, if you're pissing people off pretty much everything you say in all directions, you might be doing something a little bit right.
Yeah, I don't like that construction at all. I just think some people are idiots and have an agenda, and that's your agenda. That's not my agenda. You can do your own show. There's all the technologies out there. Calling from a 308 area code. And I would also say, but if you got a real comment, call in and make your point. Call from a 308.
Hey, Sam, it is Kowalski from Nebraska.
Kowalski from Nebraska.
The MR crew.
What's happening?
Sam, there are times when almost no news happens for weeks, and there are times where weeks worth of news happen within days, and you picked an impeccable time to go get a tan.
Well, thank you. I seem to have a knack for that.
Rush Limbaugh,
yeah.
Now this.
I just first wanted to say that even though you were not at the helm of your ship, your subordinates handled themselves impeccably well, especially given, I'm sure, the divisiveness of everything that's been going on.
Well, I treat them. You saw that clip of Putin dealing with his subordinate. That's what happens around this office when the cameras are off. And so
he just leans forward in his chair, and then we all know.
Let's spit it out. Just say it. Just say it. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when Putin walks into a room full of generals and one stands up and says, "I'm no longer afraid of you," if he keeps losing boys. But yeah, let's hope to God that the peace talks go well. I first just wanted to mention that, your crew is very solid. And then I just wanted to touch really quickly on the agricultural impacts of all of this. This is it has the potential to be an overwhelming catastrophe if it isn't resolved fairly soon. This impacts global fertilizer sales, energy sales. We're going to be investing, and has changed the prerogative of a lot of nations around the world. Just for a slight little bit of an international scope to it, the Egyptians have been basically planning a large terraforming operation for the desert to try to get more farmland, and they are dependent upon Ukrainian and Russian grain from the Black Sea area. If they feel the need then to invest in domestic, production, that means they need water, and that could put them into conflict with people upstream. The international impact of this is profound, and if it is not resolved, a very large house of cards with almost no resiliency could break away. I don't think we're to that point yet, and I do think that it is early enough to where, maybe part of the negotiations are sanctions are lifted immediately. I don't know if that's right. I don't know what you do with bullies. I don't know how you take care of empires, but this could be a catastrophe that we have not seen in quite a long time. I'll let you know more when I figure more out once the information comes out, but this is a very bad time for this to be happening.
I mean, this is, we opened the show with the point that there is a lot more, there's a lot of empathy lacking for brown people who are on the other end of bombs and guns that we see. But there is also an argument that the reason why this conflict is getting more attention is because of how integral this region and these players are to the world economy. And, there is a quality of somebody gets a cold, someone sneezes here, or somebody gets a cold over there, that type of thing. And, the Ukrainian farmland has been an issue for 100 years in terms of, particularly in this conflict.
Exactly. And there was also elements to this being a quasi-water war with Ukraine shutting off water to the Crimean area, and it is complicated. And they've done that. They've done that a little bit with areas in the Donbass, right? In Donbass region. It's my understanding since 2014 that has happened. Yeah, ways to apply pressure on the populations in order to get them to protest. But I
mean, there's a long, it was the farmland that, I don't know if this was the beginning of some genuine strains of animosity between Ukraine and Russia, but Stalin, you mentioned that, the Ukrainian farmland is, the soil, I guess, I don't know, you'd have a better sense of why.
It is some of the most fertile soil on the planet.
And the farmers in Ukraine did not want to get with the program of turning Ukraine into the sort of the breadbasket of greater Russia or the Soviet Union. And, farmers tend to be, obviously have an attachment to their land and the idea of having their own land. And Stalin came in and basically took all the grain and starved. It depends on, maybe what source you're talking about, but what appears to be millions of people. And
Part of that also had to do with some political aspects to it. An interesting part about Ukraine is not until after Stalin came to power. Well, the czars did it to a much lesser degree, but a lot of the Russian speakers in Ukraine, from my understanding, were brought in after Stalin came to power as a means to Russify the region. So they're fairly new immigrants by like 80, 90 years standards. But another aspect of it is that Ukraine has enough of a unique identity, language, and regional power would be enough to have challenged the government in Moscow. So Stalin applying that pressure may have just been a cynical ploy to ensure his own power, that no rival power base could rise up. There's also a huge, what were they called? Some sort of cavalry people that were pretty much common to the steppes area. They broke away from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Cossacks. That culture runs pretty deep there as well. All of these things came together to create that conflict. And to that end, I just want to point out that the only reason that the famine there occurred was due to very, cynical human action. Yes, there was a drought, but it was exacerbated by removing the people that knew how to manage the land during a drought and not having a proper transition towards whatever new system they wanted. I personally believe anybody can farm, but if you just throw somebody on a plot of land, they're going to have quite a few years of trial and error before they figure things out. So just all that stuff needs to be kept in mind. We've not had anything other than a man-made famine since the year without a summer. And I would also like to point out catastrophes like a year without a summer was one of the driving forces of U.S. westward expansion into the Ohio Basin for food. And it was also one of the reasons for European colonization of Africa and Southeast Asia. All of these things are connected, and yeah, it's pretty complicated, which is why I said I didn't have a full detail of what this will do agricultural wise, but it's pretty much not good unless it gets resolved quickly.
Yeah, I think that's true in many fronts. Appreciate the call, Kowalski from Nebraska.
Yeah, I wish I had better news, but yeah. So
all right, bye. Thanks. Getting back to that notion of of lack of self-awareness. There's some people, it's really just, you wonder if there is just, I mean, there's, it's ignorance. It's ignorance. It's definitely ignorance. There's no grand master plan to revise history in this moment, although there are certainly players who are looking to do it. One of those people, I'm sure, is Condi Rice. Here she is on with Fox's Harris Faulkner. In one of those moments, this is akin to the Trump kids complaining about nepotism.
Yeah, just watch her face.
Well, and I have argued that when you invade a sovereign nation, that is a war crime. I mean, I think we're at just a real basic point there.
Well, I'd agree. It is certainly against every principle of international law and international order. And
Jesus.
Throwing the book at them now in terms of economic sanctions and punishments is also a part of it. And I think the world is there. Certainly NATO is there. He's managed to unite NATO in ways that I didn't think I would ever see again after the end of the Cold War.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that blows her mind. Wait till you find out what Condi Rice did.
Yeah. That's cognitive
the Iraq
dissonance,
invasion, incidentally, and occupation was illegal by that standard. It was illegal. And I think, the other point that she had about about NATO being strengthened by this, without a doubt. The justification for NATO's existence, if Putin wanted to make a stronger argument for it, it would have been hard for him to do. And so, for those of us who were against the expansion of NATO and seeing its, purpose seemingly be, sort of obsolete. Putin has made a very good argument. Certainly, there's a lot of countries who are a little bit nervous now. I never realized that Finland was part of Greater Russia. Did you know that?
Well, I'm Finnish, so I did know that history, and I've been to Finland. So lots of that the history sprinkled throughout the country, both in like just the way that the language is very different from even Swedish and Norwegian, but also in its museums. It's there's like an underlying tension about that and history there. Just back to that clip though, really quickly. I'm wondering what Harris Faulkner thought when she asked that question of Condoleezza Rice. I said,
I think it's total ignorance. I think total ignorance.
Like, do you think even after the fact, like in that entire clip, do you think at one point, like,
nope.
Yeah.
I don't think I probably to this moment, she hasn't occurred to her, like, wait a second, that's what we did in Iraq.
Yeah.
We had a couple of partners. We had a coalition of the willing, the Polish, we had the Polish army, I think George Bush used to brag about.
Yeah.
And, but the Russians have the Belarusians and, and no, I think she's completely oblivious. Now, I think Condi Rice is like,
juice.
Nice. This is good. Maybe I can run for, maybe I can be VP.
Maybe I could be the...
People are really, really stupid, aren't they?
Exactly. Good thing we don't teach history from
know who I am?
20 years ago.
She can coach the Cleveland Browns.
Unbelievable.
I'm trying to think of an example of what that would be like. It's like talking to, like, I don't know, let's say I didn't have eczema. I'm talking to Sam, like just bashing people with eczema and like don't realize Sam has eczema.
Oh, no, this is different. This is because this is like a gift to her.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a gift to her. I mean, she does like 20 more, 15 more, 10 more news hits like this, where she becomes the voice of being able to say, we got to throw the book at these guys for, illegally, breaking the international order and attacking a sovereign country. That's it. Done. She is whitewashed, as it were. And this is what they are you kidding? She loves this. Do you like it? Won't 5 more of these Sunday appearances in that type of setup. The New York Times obituary won't even mention. They won't even mention her role in the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq.
So yeah, Harris Faulkner's doing her a favor then.
A huge favor. Sammy Key, are my IMs going through? Yes or no?
Well,
I'm not going to answer that question.
Here we go. That's an
calling
answer.
from a 757 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yeah.
Hey, Sam.
Hey.
Hey, this is Bailey from. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous. This is Bailey from Virginia. I know everybody's calling in to talk about Russia and Ukraine and stuff like that, but I just recently went to a Jordan Peterson event in my local city, and I was just curious what your guys' read. They were a gift, believe it or not, from one of my friends.
That's pretty good. That's the best
Christmas gift. Yeah, no, I wasn't going to pay for it. But I was just curious what your guys' read on his influence is in 2022. Because I noticed some pretty interesting observations when I was there about, like, the crowd.
What are they?
That subverted my expectations a little bit. First of all, it was just a much older crowd than I was expecting. I always figured he was like, the cool dark professor that the young people like.
That's pretty good.
But it was a much, thank you. It was a much older crowd than I was expecting. I remember when I first got there, he had made an announcement on his Twitter or something like that there was going to be a special guest. And where I was sitting, I was sitting at like the top like rafters, and there was an older woman sitting next to me, and I remember saying, I remember saying to my girlfriend, who was there with me, who was a trooper, by the way, getting through this whole thing.
Yeah.
I remember saying to her, if the guest is Dave Rubin, I'm going to lose my mind. And the woman next to me, her ears perked up, and she turned to me and goes, "Is Dave Rubin here?"
Oh,
and I was like,
my God.
"Oh, I don't know. I hope." And I was like, "I don't know. I hope so." And she goes, "I love Dave Rubin."
Oh
my! And I was like, "Me too." And and eventually the show starts, and the surprise guest is Michaela Peterson. Which, by the way, Sam, I'm going to be at the Boston show, and if your surprise guest is Michaela Peterson, I'm going to be very disappointed. But Michaela Peterson comes out and talks about. She just immediately starts pitching her like all her grifts, her diets, stuff like that. And Jordan came out after that, huge applause. People were stoked to see him. And he essentially took an hour and a half to, essentially say you need to make goals for yourself and do the best you can to accomplish them in his, dark professor manner. He stretched that out into about 90 minutes. But what was really interesting was the Q&A.
Now you know what the Boston show is going to be about.
It's self-help.
Yep.
I mean, you would probably do self-help better than him. Frankly, I'd be more willing to listen to your advice. Anyway, so he begins doing the Q&A, and I don't know, maybe I could email you. Because the list of questions is still there, because it was fascinating to think people were interested in hearing what he had to say about.
Do that. Maybe what we'll do at the Boston or Brooklyn show is we'll answer those questions.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh, that would be great. That'd be great. What should I send it to?
majorityreporters@gmail.com.
We'll flag that.
Just put in the subject line, Jordan. Questions.
Don't tell us the questions now, because I want them cold.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
But send them now.
Then I'll skip that. I'll save that. But I guess I've talked long enough. I was just curious what your guys' read on his influences still. Is he gaining popularity? Is the whole
I don't think
we'll let you go when we'll answer that question. We'll let
appreciate it.
All right,
thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I have people in my life who only knew he was the guy that was the self-help guy. I mean, the make your bed, clean your room, and have discipline in your life, and you'll be able to achieve more. That was what I had heard from men in my life. There are no women that really listen to him, but I think that he's become so transparently right-wing that. For those, maybe he's gained an audience with just a right-wing audience, but the people who are on the margins, I think, are gone.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think he's more defined now, and I think that does create a good speaking circuit for him, because he really what this is we need to expand higher education so older people can go and listen to some lectures, because that everyone is so massively all these people are so massively impressed by his lectures when they're really just the most basic sort of that's reworkings of his message into Plato or whatever.
His relevance as a cultural icon has shifted, I think, into where he's a right-wing cultural icon. And in that world, they love digestible, presumably academic stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like Reader's Digest. It is not a coincidence that was a magazine that the people who read Reader's Digest were conservatives. I mean, it was it doesn't have it is accessible, but making you think you're absorbing something intellectual.
Yeah.
And that's why Ben Shapiro does so well in that universe. and why Dave Rubin's going to have trouble in the university. Because he can't even sound smart.
Or Barry Weiss, for that matter.
Barry
too.
Weiss is also one of those.
But Brett Weinstein, also former professor. And,
Yes.
and Peterson,
Perfect example.
And that's why they're so good at this, because Peterson does this thing, and you can search this one on your own. Jordan Peterson, Tower of Babel, and it's like, actually, this is why multiculturalism doesn't work so well. And it's like a 10-minute thing of him just explaining the Tower of Babel to folks, and all these old folks in the audience be like, "Oh my gosh, yes!" And it's like church, but at someplace else.
It's the aesthetics of intellectualism, or of smartness, of like you're learning something without really being taught anything that changes your opinion of the world. In fact, it reinforces the wrong things.
All right, one more call. Got to be a quick one.
Oh my God, I didn't even realize what.
Yeah,
time
and then
it
we
was.
got to do some IMs and some more clips. Calling from a 256. You were right. We're going to go late today. Calling from a 256 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
How could I have foreseen it?
This is Jacob from Alabama.
Jacob from Alabama. You are the final caller of the day.
Hey, yo. Yeah, I just wanted to see if y'all had seen the mine workers hearing in D.C. like a couple weeks ago now. I know it's kind of late to talk about it, but Tupperville had some really, really wild comments.
Really?
What
yes. So before Braxton, a striking Alabama coal miner, spoke, and the international...
Oh, no. We lost you.
Oh.
You differ
Can
a
you hear
little
me?
bit, Jacob. Yeah, give us your last 5 seconds.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Before Braxton and Cecil, folks from the union testified, Tommy Tupperville gave a small testimony in which he said that, one, he didn't think it was appropriate. I think several of the other did that as well. And he also said that he didn't think Congress should be weighing in at all on private matters between workers and their companies, which we know is really crazy because Republicans talk about private matters all the time. It was a private matter that Dr. Seuss's estate decided to get rid of the racist cartoons in his portfolio. And then he said, "Oh, but if I'm going to weigh in at all, it's going to be on the side of the company." And he said that it's worth noting that the average wage of these coal miners is $97,000 a year, and doesn't mention that it took them 6 to 7 day weeks, 10 to 12-hour days to get that salary.
Right.
And I don't know, it was really, really disgusting. I don't know. I was yelling at my computer when I heard it.
Send us some clips to it or links to it. That would be great. Maybe we'll look into that. But the hiding of the I don't know, what is it? What is the hiding of the ball here by Tupperville is that the government is already involved in that relationship between the management at the coal mine and the workers. The government is involved in all of those relationships already. It's just
that's why they had that hearing. It was about private equity's role and the bankruptcy laws that were created in D.C. that allowed the company to completely renege on all the obligations to the retirees, people that had dedicated their life to the industry, the contract that they had signed with the workers before, and that's why the workers felt like they had to accept a $6 an hour pay cut to keep their jobs and to keep their union. And Tupperville just totally, and I spoke on our show to a local conservative host, and he was like, "Well, you've done more research about this than me," and I'm like, "This is the largest strike." Or the longest strike in our state's history, and I don't think he's ever talked about it on his show. And he speaks for hours a day, and he has the gall to not care about that and talk about how Minnie Mouse wearing pants for 1 month halfway across the world is serious. I mean, it's just I don't know. So while Republicans were doing that, though, socialists raised almost $20,000 for them for their strike fund. The DSA did, Southern chapters of the DSA.
Oh, great.
So
great.
Pretty cool.
All right. Jacob, really appreciate the call. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thanks.
All right, folks. That's the phone call portion of our program. We will get to some IMs in a moment. We've got a couple of clips. I don't know which is the most insane. 16 or 11 or 14 or
okay, I'm gonna say 16 because let's do 16, but then we also probably should touch on Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking at Fuentes' conference, and then that might take a while.
We have multiple clips for that, I think.
All right, let's do 15 and 16.
Okay.
First, here is Fox's Steve Hilton. Let me just preface this by saying 20 years ago, maybe it was like 15 years ago, the big thing that Limbaugh was on about was pink ties and the feminization of America, that we were all being feminized.
Literally something Tucker says once a week at least on his show, because look, China's troops, they know who men are.
And at that time it was, they're laughing at us in Iraq because we're so feminized. I mean, to the point where I got a phone call from somebody who was talking about Dick Durbin's pink tie on the Senate and how they were laughing at, the mullahs were laughing at us.
I mean, what about Obama's tan suit? I mean, that's for,
the tan suit was disrespectful.
Right. Well,
it was disrespectful. It wasn't as feminine.
Gotcha.
The pink ties. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's no longer the aughts. We're into now the 20s, the roaring 2020s. And so we have a new form of feminization. Steve Hilton, wearing this shirt on with the jacket,
V-necks. We could make a case that that's cool, feminizing.
Here we go.
Deal. These were supposed to be the adults in the room, the great geniuses of foreign policy. Just look at them. There they all sat on Friday in the White House wearing their ludicrous face coverings, all of them triple vaccinated anyway. Do they have any idea how weak that made America look? To think they actually staged that photo. Did nobody in the White House stop to say, you know what, if we're trying to show a brutal dictator that we're serious about standing up to him, it might not be the best idea to have our military chiefs cowering in pathetic little masks. That picture captured better than anything else the collapse of American power, prestige, and credibility under Biden.
Oh, please.
First off, that dude sounds like he's in a garage somewhere with a TV behind him.
It might literally be what Nomi said they send is like a van.
Yeah, and it could, because he's a coward too. The idea that there was even a moment where somebody goes like, do we invade? They're wearing masks. Yes, do it. I mean, just insane.
So is a Tony Blair director of strategy, David Cameron.
Brilliant. This is, I mean, I don't know. It's just like,
but that's how a lot of that is what the anti-mask Republican base believes about COVID. You're a pussy if you're afraid of it and you listen to basic science.
It's feminizing to wear a mask. You're a coward. You wear a mask.
Your balls fall off. You put a mask on your face.
You're wearing a face diaper, a chin diaper. There was one or two moments where we got a couple of looks about masks.
Oh, yeah?
We were down in Disney. Yeah.
You know, there's estrogen in the fabric.
It was funny. It was from, it was a couple of women though. There was a look of like,
well, that's because it's like she sees, you're obviously a man, right?
Yep. Well,
and you're contributing to the feminization of America.
Arguably, if I'm wearing a mask, I'm arguably a man. My daughter, of course, wore a mask because she's so feminine.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And
I wonder what Steve Hilton has to say about women wearing masks. Does that just it's like wearing a dress? Am I like, is he confused about my gender right now?
This is America. There'll be a new thing that will be feminizing in the future, as opposed to the V-neck with the that look. I don't know, man. That goes so far masculine, it comes back around.
It's a boomerang of masculinity.
Which one should we do? 11? I mean, these are all insane.
Can I do a British accent in that one too? I have practiced it.
Oh, let's do Mike Lindell.
Oh,
this guy's still around. So
incredible longevity.
First of all, it's just sort of like, CNN was going to do an Alex Jones documentary, and I guess they pulled it, maybe ostensibly because of the war coverage. But I mean, Give me a break. I guess it's one thing. This is my perspective on this. If you're going to go up and mock Mike Lindell, then okay. And I guess if you're you're someone like Robert Costa, who, was a Washington Post reporter, he had a PBS show, maybe he still does now, he's working for CBS.
Yeah.
And his beat is to cover conservative politics. I guess it makes sense. I guess you should let the American public know. But this guy is just a raging lunatic. They won't even let him speak at CPAC. At CPAC, they won't let him speak. Here he is.
He's censored from CPAC.
He's censored from CPAC.
More like the Censorship Political Action Committee.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he is.
So basically, Costa asked him if which attorneys gave him the material that he showed to Trump regarding martial law, or was there that recommendation?
No, he wanted Trump to declare martial law.
Yeah,
because of what was going on with the election.
And he said that there were attorneys backing this declaration
up. Of course, right? Like this is like that story about when Governor LePage in Maine. His lawyers had to call him aside because he was meeting with sovereign citizens who were saying that he was allowed as the governor to assassinate lawmakers and just would have sheriffs do it. And his lawyers had to come up to him afterwards and go, dude, that's not true. But here is Mike Lindell. He's upset about this question.
CBS, Robert Costa is a traitor to the United States of America. No, you're a traitor. This is old news. You're regurgitating. You care about, why do you protect a company called Dominion and you attack a company called MyPillow? You're a traitor to our country. You're a disgusting traitor. Traitor, 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 traitor. You're disgusting. Disgusting. CBS, you're one step above Fox, who doesn't talk at all. That's what you guys are. He's asking me about the picture at the White House a year ago. You're disgusting. You won't tell me the lawyers are. You're disgusting. You're disgusting. You're disgusting. Are you a communist? You're just.
I like how he takes an end around to like, why do you protect the company called Dominion and attack the company called MyPillow? It's just like, you could shorten that sentence a bit, but you got to declare their companies. I don't know. It's just a little weird.
Well, it is a test of patriotism. You either support MyPillow or you.
The company called
MyPillow. That was impressive. I also like how the cameraman seemed to focus on the cross on his lapel pin. That was pretty good.
I can't help picturing Javier Bardem playing Mike Lindell in that.
That'd be pretty good. Yeah. Wait, did that happen?
They won't even let him. They
yeah.
won't even let him. They won't even let him speak at CPAC. Incidentally, I can tell you, I've been covering, talking about CPAC for 16 years now, 18 years, close to it. And people would say like, oh, all you're doing is just getting the freaks. They have nothing to do with the Republican Party. They're not the same. Why are you doing this? Here is probably the next presidential nominee of the Republican Party, and also, incidentally, the last Republican president, who was obviously from the Republican Party.
That's just the fringes.
Yeah.
I mean, him speaking along with Ted Cruz, sitting Republican senator, Josh Hawley, sitting Republican senator. It's just the fringes at CPAC.
Just the fringes at CPAC. Should we just play this one clip of, should we do number 5? Is that worth doing it?
I like 6 a little bit.
Let's do 6 then.
Yeah.
Here is Donald Trump. Remember, Donald Trump is the one who said to Zelensky on the phone, like, we'll give you some aid, but we're going to need a favor first. But here is Donald Trump. The idea of even just seeing Donald Trump in a T-shirt is almost too disturbing to contemplate.
I don't want to think about that.
We're out here at Mar-a-Lago. We're not going anywhere. Okay?
Here he is. He's at CPAC in Orlando. And let me tell you, Zelensky, okay, tough guy, I'm tougher.
Zelensky, and he's not abandoning his people. He's saying and taking up arms with his countrymen. If you were in a similar situation as president, would you take up arms like Zelensky?
Well, you never know about bravery. Some people think they're brave and they're not brave, and other people don't think of themselves as very brave and they step up. You never know until you get tested. And
damn, he's waxing poetically about bravery.
Is that it? Do we have more?
No, that's it. But because that reminds me of it's sorry to be dorky, but he is Joffrey. He's just old, like in Game of Thrones when in the Battle of Blackwater Bay, Joffrey goes and hides as Tyrion leads his forces. He would never in his wildest dreams actually fight for his country. Are you kidding me?
It might be in the fighter jet.
I don't want to brag too much, but let me just say you never know. But of course we know. I would definitely be there.
Why isn't the McDonald's open? I need a Big Mac. We're supposed to have a war council without 25 Big Macs? Open the McDonald's up, first order of business.
I would be there. I don't need to say it, but everybody knows it's true.
I'd be there in spirit.
I'd be there.
The MAGA spirit.
Trump rolling through on a golf cart.
The links, they're on fire.
All right, one more clip that we should do here. A lot of people searching about why is this happening. There's a history, obviously, between Ukraine and Russia. There is, I think there was a lot of shock that Putin actually decided to actually invade, both on the Ukrainian and I think even in the Russian side. There's been a lot of commentators who have said Putin didn't even lay the political groundwork for this invasion of Ukraine. He just presumed it was there. We saw in the run-up to the Iraq War, the Bush administration spent a year, at least, building this really weak case, but this, conflating 9/11 with Saddam Hussein, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that nobody's examined as to why this has happened is the role of Greta Thunberg. And the only people I have seen bring this up, frankly, are on Steve Bannon's
only truth tellers
team. And here is Ben. This is not fake. This is Ben Harnwell. Harnwell. This is the War Room International editor. And you really do expect at the end of this, this is not a spoiler. I guess this is a spoiler alert. At the end of this dude does not go, Baba Booey, Baba Booey.
There's a direct causal link between Greta Thunberg at the UN podium with the tears down her cheeks saying, how dare you, between that and all the damage she's been doing throughout Europe and the world, pushing for climate fanaticism and Vladimir Putin's dominance and being able to invade Ukraine last week. A direct causal link. We have
a direct causal link. Do we not have more of that? Is that all we have? We got to get more of that. I got to see where that's going. Apparently, it's
hard to access War Room, to be fair.
But apparently, he lays it out over 8 minutes. A direct causal link.
Yeah.
Between Greta Thunberg and this. And at the end of it, he does not say Baba Booey or that Howard Stern's ass is going to light up over the Russian skies. Nothing like that. It is just straight on.
Trying to follow his logic here or guess where he's going with this. So it's just the globalists. They were all spurred into action by the crisis actor of Greta.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
Quite obvious.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It took me a second. I'm a slow woman.
Yeah, Brian Whelan is a UK journalist. Quote tweeted a guy who has this tweet: Russia Communist Party Duma member Markayev, the first to condemn the Ukraine invasion among Moscow lawmakers on Instagram. And Whelan says, fairly significant, says to his great regret, the plan to take DPR and LPR had a hidden motive. Communist Party in China and Cuba both telling Putin to enter talks just leaves him with the support of those 4 lads from the IRSP. So, like, there were certain groups within Russia that expected, like, those border regions that people were talking about. That's what Putin had prepared them for, and not like this wide-ranging invasion.
I mean, it could be, the idea could be that Putin has is that he wants to either annex or to have them, as independent, in quotations, areas that are, essentially Russian client states. And, sometimes you reach further than you want as a way of settling, in quotes, for these things. Who knows? But we'll talk to him.
He kind of looks like the guy from Pink Panther. What's his name? I'm like blanking on Clouseau. Yes. Oh, there he is. Clouseau on the case.
Bucket hats, I don't want to dislike them, but they just don't work, do they?
No, I mean they're like hot on, or they're like all the rage on models now, like female models.
But what's going on there? Like, you wear those hats to protect you from the sun.
No, it's a fashion choice.
Is that why he does it?
He just wants to look more like Gigi Hadid.
It really does look like the dude is just like gonna just come out and just like joking. Baba Booey. All right, I'm gonna do 10 of these and then we're out of here. Bourbon Socialist. Okay, kids, just go ride It's a Tiny World over and over. It's a small world for 6 hours while dad goes and gets brain rot from CPAC debates about common law. Fabucat 58. Ukrainians, Russians, and Slovakians may be white, but most are poor. Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe. There are many wealthy, educated people in Syria and Iraq, which is the very cradle of civilization. Have you read my email? Welcome back, Sam. I fear the day you're going on vacation next. Who knows what will happen next time you do? Alien invasion? Giant meteorite?
Good point.
It's true. Dangle Wangle. Tan Sam. Local milk person. What exactly do you guys think these whataboutist hot takes accomplish? It's good you started not to minimize with what's happening, because you could have fooled me. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by
we didn't minimize.
It's not a hot take. What do I think it accomplishes? I don't think, if you are looking for this show to accomplish something, then you're an idiot. This show's not going to accomplish anything. Any YouTube show is not going to accomplish anything. What we're doing is trying to just basically make people think about these things that they may not be thinking about. If you want in-depth reporting on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, well, I mean, we did have actually, I guess, a reporter on, who is on the ground. But by and large, like, no, what we're talking about is just trying to raise the sensitivity about areas where there may be hypocrisy, where there may be things that you're not thinking about. We don't mean to minimize what's happening. That's why I said that. But we couldn't just regurgitate everything else that you could read on Google News. We could do that, but that's not what this show is. So I would say to the local milk person, head to a different locality. Honestly, like, it's just.
Sam, I mean, like, this was
what was always happening. Yeah.
All week.
Devil. Hey, MR crew. Great job as always. Some of us IMers love you. Good to have you back, Sam. Emma did an amazing job last week.
Thank you.
Also, I was watching Left Reckoning last night. My roommate walked in and remarked that I look like the child of Matt Leck and David Griscom if they could have a baby, just FYI.
Well, we can't.
Teacher Dan, how did that Disney thing go? Eager to go back? I'm not going to go into, like, at one point I'll do like a full Disney rant, but I would say this. Basically, I am of the mind that if you are a person who says who needs to ask the question, should I go to Disney? The answer is probably no. I'm not saying that it's not great for people who are, full on, and it's quite possible my son will remember this, those moments for the rest of his life. I certainly remember stuff when I was a kid from there.
Same.
But I don't know that my life would have been diminished if I didn't have that memory.
Yeah.
And I was, I think I also may have memories of my parents' behavior scarring me, which my son may also have. So I don't know. I am not eager to go back. A Square. Sam, welcome back. Glad got my tickets for Brooklyn early. Emma had a kick-ass interviews, but my favorite was Deva Woodley.
Diva.
Sorry to see how Africans trying to leave Ukraine are being held back. Race an issue everywhere and every time. Indeed.
I meant to ask you, so did Milo like the pool stuff more than the regular Disney things? When I was 16, I would only want to lay at the pool. That would be the only thing I cared about. To this day, that's kind of all I want to do on vacation. So
it did not go well on that end.
Oh.
Militant apathy. Trust. If Putin gets in the way of mob money, the mob will move Putin out of the way. That's the law of the streets, bro. It doesn't matter if you set them up. Fierce deity. We can only hope that someday Saul's passion for birds will match his father's passion for apples. Indeed. J-Man Raps. Hey, Sam, Emma did a great job last week proving she's truly goated.
Yeah, man.
Speaking of which, Fred Van Fleet and my Raps take out on the drama-laced Brooklyn Nets tonight. Raps going to smoke them by 20. Mr. Matt Leck and Bradley, no cap.
Is it in Brooklyn or is it in Toronto? Because if it's in Toronto, I'm taking the Nets.
Bookha.
Toronto still doesn't have fans.
Book hacky. There is so much
different in different Canadian provinces too, because I watched the hockey there. Sorry, go on.
There is so much effing hate for NFTs on this pod. It is sickening. I know way more than all of you combined. Let me tell you my background. I am the founder of Quibi, the former premier place for poorly thought out short form TV shows. When you keep pissing on NFTs, it lessens my ability to resurrect a new version of my scam where I get billions of dollars in VC money for what amounts to vaporware. F you forever, Sam. That's what I say. By the way, would you be interested in a slot on my new Quibi 2 platform? Thinking of buying the rights to your show for $100 million a season and selling each frame of each episode as an NFT? Let me know. Yes, available.
Good luck with that.
Thank you, Jeffrey Katzenberg.
The NFT project where it was drone photographs over a refugee boat in the Mediterranean.
That was horrible.
And it's like
it was worse. It's not only is offensive, bad taste, disgusting. It also it's well, dude, isn't the whole point of news is that you're not monetizing that stuff? Isn't that why you're allowed to do that without blurring out their faces? You're about to you're taking a huge shit in your commissary. Fox News producer. The Condi Rice segment seems weird in that context, but we actually had an ending planned where UN guards rushed in and took her to The Hague, but we got into a disagreement with their people about craft services and it fell apart. Okay.
It's a honeypot situation.
The final IM of the day. Evan Flo. Everyone talking about how scary it is to see war happening outside the Middle East reminds me of when Modern Warfare 2 first came out. My classmates playing it were shocked to see the destruction of war in modern suburbs. It left a sour taste in my mouth to see people talking about how scary that was, but thought it was super cool to play the drone mission in the first game.
Yeah.
We should also say, we saw this Kosovo and Serbia. There was fighting in Europe and in Ukraine, but there was also fighting, British and the Irish. I'm still wearing a mask and I'm on the tail end of a sinus infection. I was getting some coffee and a couple of girls were whispering about my girlfriend and I wearing them. Kind of wanted to tell them that we're sick and asked if they prefer we cough directly into their eyes or something. One story. The last night I was there, I would go into the area where I would pick up food and like a gift shop in the the hotel area, and only the employees are wearing masks. I mean, my family and maybe one or two other families, occasionally you'd see something, but for the most part, nobody's. And so I go up to the counter, and I could hear the woman talking to the other woman, and she like had a very nasal, it sounded like she had a cold. And she goes, and she said like right off the bat, like, because maybe I think I was getting some Benadryl or something. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh yeah, no, I have this horrible cold." Like, and I'm like, "You do?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, you sound a little stuffed up." And she goes, "Yeah, no, it's when the weather changes. My body just reacts to the color." No. And I'm like, the weather went from like 65 to 75, and it may not occur to you about the pandemic that's going on. I was like, "Thank you very much. Bye-bye." I just ran out. Jesus. Just like, man. All right, folks. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid.